The quiet afternoon in Maple Ridge Park was broken by the thunderous Harleys, whose engines she could hear before she even saw them. Hannah Anderson was soon encircled by members of the Dark Knights, the state's most feared motorcycle club, all dressed in leather. Sophie grabbed her mother's hand in fear as Steele, their leader, strode toward her with predatory confidence, his scarred face contorted in a ruthless sneer. However, these seasoned crooks were about to discover that outward appearances can be deadly. The most lethal Marine sniper of the previous 10 years was hiding behind Hannah's kind teacher persona. They believed they had discovered a simple target, just another unmarried mother to demolish. Rather, they had unintentionally fallen into the path of a lady who had killed valuable targets on 3 continents. You only commit certain errors once, and the Dark Knights were on the verge of making their final one. Tell us where you're tuning in from before we resume. Make sure to subscribe if this tale resonates with you, as I have something really special in store for you tomorrow. In Maple Ridge Park, where the afternoon sun created long shadows through the ancient oak trees, the autumn air wafted falling leaves. As her 6-year-old daughter played on the swings with other neighborhood children, Hannah Anderson stood close to the playground equipment, her careful gaze never leaving Sophie. As a mother and a middle school English teacher, she walked with the peaceful assurance of someone who has devoted their life to nurturing others. She was 38 years old. As she worked, a stack of ungraded papers with red pen marks on the margins sat next to her on the wooden bench. The typical Thursday afternoon activity filled the park. Jack Peterson called out warm hello to the regulars as he strolled around the perimeter with his golden retriever. For more than 30 years, his diner had been a mainstay, acting as an unofficial community center and a meeting spot. The rustling of leaves was mingled with the yells and laughter of many of Hannah's Eagles Point Middle School pupils as they played basketball on the court. Mid-correction, Hannah's fingers hesitated, her trained senses picking up the distant sound of motorcycles before anybody else did. The sound alone told her that 3 years of civilian life had rewarded her instincts. From the east came 5 bikes, extensively modified Harleys. As she inspected the park's entrance, her grip on her red pen tightened imperceptibly. "Mom, take a look." Pumping her legs to swing higher, Sophie called out. Even as she followed the sound of the approaching motors, Hannah forced a smile. "That's fantastic, my love, take care up there." Despite the stress growing in her muscles, her voice stayed steady. Unaware of the increasing thunder, other parents carried on talking. The chrome of the first Dark Knight's motorcycle shone in the late afternoon sunlight as it pulled up at the park entrance. 4 others trailed closely behind, their leather slashes decorated with the gang's symbol, a medieval knight's helmet with flames shooting from the visor. With the same scars on his face that she had seen in the police bulletins displayed at the school security office, Hannah instantly recognized Victor Steele Harrison as their commander. As the motorcycles dismounted, parents started to gather their kids, their actions timed to the intimidation drills. They spread out, blocking the main exit, and Hannah stared with narrowed eyes. Weapons hidden under leather jackets, battle stances that revealed military histories, and trained formations that suggested planned operations were all automatically catalogued by her memory. Hannah shouted out, "Sophie," in a soft yet forceful voice. "It's time to leave, my dear." Steele stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching on the leaves. He was flanked at exact angles by 2 of his lieutenants, Spectre and Doom. Hannah was familiar with the configuration from her own training. It was a common intimidation strategy meant to look informal while optimizing tactical advantage. Steele declared, "Beautiful afternoon," his voice echoing through the now quiet park. An ideal day to discuss local business opportunities with the community. While other parents rushed their kids to the secondary exits, Hannah led Sophie behind her. Jack Peterson had put his dog down and was reaching for his phone. His attention was drawn to Hannah, who gave him a subtle head shake. "Not quite yet." Hannah answered, "We were just leaving," with the same composed authority that she displayed in her classroom. Steele flashed a gold tooth as his smile grew. "It would be unfortunate." We traveled this far to discuss protection and the future of Eagles Point. He pointed to the deserted park. There are many hazardous factors out there, and mishaps are inevitable. As Doom and Spectre tried to block their way to the parking lot, Sophie snuggled closer to Hannah's leg. Hannah's thoughts whirled through possible scenarios, figuring out angles, evaluating dangers, and locating possible weapons. 2 decades of Marine Corps training had not been obliterated by 3 years of teaching English in middle school. Hannah retorted that Steele's right hand kept wandering toward his jacket and that the police handle protection in Eagles Point. Concealed weapon, perhaps a bulge .45. The department is well run by Chief Anderson. There was no humor in Steele's laugh. Response times are slow, and Chief Anderson is becoming older. However, we are always present and constantly keeping an eye on the people in our neighborhood. He moved in closer, looming over her with his height. Of course, at a fair monthly cost. Sophie shuddered against Hannah's leg. She already had 7 strategies in mind to deal with the imminent threat. However, each possibility ran the risk of revealing her true identity and the reasons for her decision to start over in this sleepy town. Choosing not to kill was sometimes the most difficult thing for a trained killer. Playing for time, she watched Spectre and Doom continue their flanking maneuver and inquired, "How much?" "For you." Steele pretended to think about it. "Let's assume an educational discount of $2,000 per month." His grin became rapacious. "Tomorrow is the first payment due. The first of each month after that." Hannah remarked steadily, "That's more than half my teaching salary," as she subtly adjusted her weight in anticipation of the next move. "It's better than paying hospital bills," Doom said, advancing. "Children are frequently injured on playgrounds, when they walk home from school by themselves, or when they cross roadways without looking." Inside her shift, Hannah sensed a familiar chill creeping into her bones. They had done more than merely threaten her. Sophie had been in danger, and there were boundaries you didn't cross with a mother who had previously been the Marine Corps' most effective lethal weapon. Steele assumed her quiet was dread and urged, "Think it over. The deadline is tomorrow." Hannah's eyes narrowed as well. Talking to Anderson is pointless. When police are called, the cost increases significantly. With their point delivered, the bikers started to retreat. With deliberate threat, Steele paused and turned back to face Hannah and Sophie. "Remind yourself, tomorrow. This visit was merely cordial. It won't be as nice the next time." Hannah pulled Sophie close as she watched the motorcycles roar to life until the final bike vanished around the corner. From where they had taken refuge, more parents started to emerge, their expressions displaying a mixture of fear and relief. Jack Peterson, still holding his phone, came slowly up. "I'm going to call the chief, Hannah." Hannah stopped, already making preparations in her thoughts. Not yet. In order to give Sophie a regular life and to escape her past, she had picked Eagles Point. However, the only thing that might save their future now is that past. "Give me a day." Sophie's eyes were full of tears as she gazed up at her mother. "Are the terrible guys returning, Mom?" Hannah knelt down and used soft fingertips that had once put together sniper rifles in the dark to wipe away her daughter's tears. "Sweetheart, don't worry. Everything will be handled by Mom." Her mind started figuring out approaches, angles, and ranges, but she forced a comforting grin. Those men have just committed a grave error. Longer shadows were created over Maple Ridge Park as the afternoon sun sank. Hannah collected their possessions, moving slowly even though she was still experiencing the effects of adrenaline. She had 24 hours before the dark nights came again to demand payment. She has 24 hours to determine how to safeguard her new existence without bringing her old one's murderous specter back to life. Hannah's experienced eyes noticed a motorcycle parked covertly across the street, its rider observing them through mirrored sunglasses, as they made their way to their vehicle. Already, the dark knights were demarcating their domain and setting up monitoring. Safe at the top of their food chain, they believed they were the predators. They would be aware that they were now prey by tomorrow. Hannah took a detour on her way home, her eyes continuously searching for tails in the rearview mirror. She could clearly notice the amateur surveillance that the Dark Knights had set up along their route, 3 observers. A black pickup vehicle and 2 Harleys are moving through the peaceful streets of Eagles Point with loose coverage. Sophie's tiny fists gripped her rucksack as she sat calmly in the back seat. "Why were those men so frightening, Mom?" With a slick turn onto Oak Street to dodge their latest tale, Hannah responded, "Some people think that being scary gives them power. But rather than frightening people, true strength comes from defending them." 3 years ago, their modest 2-story house was carefully chosen for its various escape routes and great sightlines on a corner property. Hannah helped Sophie inside the garage after pulling in, moving casually. She didn't let her teaching persona falter until the doors were secured. First homework, then dinner. With her arithmetic paper already out, Sophie questioned. "My daughter is that." Squeezing her daughter's shoulder, Hannah grinned. "I have some calls to make." "Without me, begin." A secure satellite phone, one of many safeguards Hannah had taken since leaving active duty, was visible in her home office when she lifted a false panel behind her filing cabinet. From recollection, she dialed a number. A male voice said, "Anderson Residence." "It's Hannah, Mike. Do you recall the favor you owed me in Kandahar?" A pause. "Did they find you?" "Not them. Local issue. MC for Dark Knights. Eagles Point is where they're going. I heard about Jesus and Hannah. Last month, 3 people died in Pine Valley. The police referred to it as an accident." Hannah's mouth clenched. "They're targeting families, launching protection rackets, and intensifying. Last week, they made an attempt to recruit at the high school. What are you in need of?" "Intel first. Their activities, relationships, and vulnerabilities. Then perhaps some vintage equipment. Let me have 12 hours. And watch out, Hannah. These men are more than simply motorcyclists. They are allegedly supported by military contractors who use them to upend small villages in order to seize land." Hannah hung up and looked at her security feeds. Disguised as home security equipment, these basic cameras have military-level monitoring capabilities. Twice again the black truck had gone by. Ineffective intimidation techniques. Her phone buzzed on her burner. Detective Claire Ashworth texted. "Heard about the park. We must speak. 7 p.m. at Peterson's Diner." Hannah weighed the dangers. Claire was an excellent police officer. Despite orders to retreat, one of the few people actively exploring the Dark Knights. Copy. Typical booth. A home normalcy prevailed for the next hour. Hannah kept up their pattern, made dinner, and assisted Sophie with her homework. Her mind, however, was working tactical possibilities beneath the surface. Creating a contingency map. Another carefully maintained relationship began at 6:45 when their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, came to watch Sophie. During Vietnam, the elderly woman served as military intelligence. If there was trouble, she would see it. "Do you have any allergies?" Mrs. Chen inquired, her piercing gaze expressing a deeper message. "No allergies." Hannah gave the predetermined code in response. However, she shouldn't be hosting anyone tonight. Even if they claim to be buddies, they are not. On Main Street, Peterson's Diner stood, its neon sign illuminating the rain-slicked tarmac with red and blue shadows. Hannah saw Claire in their regular booth, facing the door and able to see all of the exits. "Good habits. You seem worn out," Hannah said as she slipped into the booth. Surveillance for 3 weeks was blown. A coffee cup was pushed across the table by Claire. Dark Knights was aware that we were keeping an eye on their shipments of guns. They're getting police intelligence from someone. They're becoming more audacious. There was more to the park than money. They had a message to convey. 5 of our girls are missing from nearby counties. Last seen in the vicinity of Dark Knight's land. First, their relatives were contacted regarding protection. Claire's tone was one of restrained rage. However, every time we approach, witnesses retract their statements and the proof vanishes. Hannah took in the information and incorporated it into her expanding strategic vision. They're creating a trend. Take over tiny communities. Make use of them as staging grounds for more extensive operations. They're planning something major, according to my CI. At the end of the week, there will be some sort of arrangement. Major players from out of state are arriving. Claire bent over. Be careful, Hannah. They're not like the others. Well prepared. Linked. On Mountain Pass, the last police officer who approached too closely experienced a brake failure. Past the diner, a motorbike engine rumbled. Another flyby from one of the Dark Knight's watchers. Hannah took note of the rider. Fong, based on his cut. Excessive force in Iraq led to a former service member's dishonorable discharge. They'll return tomorrow, Hannah muttered. Anticipate their protection funds. I'll send a crew to your place. We are able to. No. Hannah had a gentle authority in her voice. Claire, I don't require protection. They do. Her friend's face was examined by the detective. Eagles Point doesn't know everything about you, does it? Hannah grinned a little. Sometimes hiding in plain sight is the safest option. More motorbikes went by outside. A purposeful display of power. Their area was being marked by the Dark Knights. Gaining control. They believed them to be predators. Hannah up and left money for coffee, saying, I should get back to Sophie. Claire, exercise caution in your research. These men are more than simply bike-riding thugs. They were trained by someone. You seem fairly sure of that. Let's assume that I am aware of the warning indicators. Hannah stopped at the entrance. Claire, too. Remember when things begin to happen. Tonight, you never saw me. It took longer to drive home. Hannah shakes any tales by taking evasive paths. She made links in her mind as it processed the new knowledge. Not alone were the Dark Knights growing. They had a well-thought-out plan in place. Criminal chaos masquerading as military precision. When she got there, Sophie was asleep. Beside her bed, Mrs. Chen reads peacefully. No disruptions were confirmed by the older woman's discreet nod. Hannah secured the house and went down to her basement. She pulled a hard case she had hoped she would never open again from under the shelves of holiday decorations and teaching materials. There was a quiet click of the combination lock. Within, encased in foam, were the implements of her previous profession. Not only weaponry, but the ability to fight the kind of war for which she had received training. The kind that took place in the dark. When you win, your targets are unaware of your presence until it's too late. It took us a long time to prepare and tell this narrative. Please subscribe to our channel if you find it entertaining. It is really important to us. Let's return to the narrative. Mike texted her, and her phone buzzed. There's more going on, Hannah, but intel is coming. These men are connected to the federal government. They're pulling strings. Hannah made the choice to close the case. To get away from her past, she had picked Eagles Point. To provide Sophie with a typical life. However, that history may now be the only thing protecting her daughter. The Dark Knights would return the following day, hoping to find a terrified single mother willing to pay for protection. Rather, they would start learning a lesson that had resulted in the deaths of several others. Not all of the targets were intended to be endangered. Furthermore, certain predators were more adept than others at blending in with their surroundings. An fall chill blew across Eagles Point as dawn broke. Hannah had been up for hours, keeping tabs on Dark Knight's whereabouts around the town. They followed systematic patterns. Teams of 3 men collected from companies that had already complied with their requests. She was being saved until last. More astute than most 6-year-olds, Sophie ate breakfast in silence. "Can I stay with Mrs. Chen today again, Mom?" "Sweetheart, that's probably an excellent idea." Taking note of the motorcycle that had already gone by twice, Hannah prepared her daughter's lunch. "Do you recall what we practiced? Use the back gate to get to Mrs. Chen's if I spot the nasty guys. Keep going. Don't turn around." Sophie faithfully recited. "Are you going to harm them, Mom?" Hannah hesitated, picking her words wisely. "I will ensure that they are unable to harm anyone else." Following her usual pattern, Hannah drove to Eagles Point Middle School after dropping Sophie off at school. But there were more than just papers to grade in her teacher's briefcase today. At midnight, Mike had delivered his intelligence, which included comprehensive dossiers on the Dark Knight's operations, command structure, and weaknesses. Anderson, Miss, she was caught in the corridor by Principal Roberts. "This morning some men inquired about you." "We don't share staff information," I informed them. "Jim, thank you." Hannah gave a comforting grin. "Just keep in mind that you didn't see me today if they return." Instead of leaving her car parked in the school lot, she rode a bicycle that was strategically placed so she could watch the Dark Knight's surveillance without being noticed. 4 guys were on guard at her house, while 2 more were keeping an eye on possible escape routes from the school. The phone on her burner vibrated. "Mike Collins. Satellite indicates that 12 bikes are on their way to you. Steele is taking the lead. They're setting an example, not merely gathering." Hannah had been meticulous in her preparation. She has full situational awareness thanks to tiny cameras concealed throughout her property that send data to her phone. She wouldn't simply be waiting for the Dark Knights. They would enter meticulously groomed terrain. Their presence was signaled by the roar of motorcycles. With Spectre and Doom at his sides, Steele took the lead in the formation. The others dispersed, creating a perimeter with well-honed effectiveness. Steele came to her front door, and Hannah watched through her security monitors. "Anderson, Ms. There was a fake kindness in Steele's voice. It's time for our business talk." With her teacher's smile properly in place, Hannah answered the door before he could knock. "Harrison, Mr. I had you in mind." Her realization of Steele's true name caused a brief moment of astonishment on his scarred face. 2,000, only cash. That will not take place." Hannah's voice was still sweet, but she made a subtle change in posture. "You will depart from Eagles Point. Look for simpler targets." With his hand delving inside his wound, Doom took a step forward. Hannah's gaze followed the movement with icy accuracy. "You don't seem to get it, lady. Force recon for 3 years." Silently, Hannah broke in. "Excessive force, which is a dishonorable dismissal. Because of the shrapnel in your left knee, you favor your right side. James, do you want me to continue?" Doom froze as his true name struck him like a blow to the body. Steele's expression grew gloomy. "You have been keeping an eye on us. That's not very intelligent. Better than last month's attack on a Marine's daughter at Pine Valley Elementary." Hannah's remarks elicited a noticeable response. "Did you believe the pattern would go unnoticed? Families with military members. Parents without children. Those with experience in security. Show her some etiquette, Spectre." His lieutenant took a step forward, and Steele took a step back. Most spectators couldn't keep up with what happened next because it happened so quickly. As he reached for Hannah, Spectre found himself on the ground with his own knife on his throat and his arm bent at an angle that nature had not intended. The horrified bikers heard Hannah say, "I could end this now. I don't want to convey that message, though." She stepped back into her doorway and let go of Spectre. "It's your only opportunity. Get out of Eagles Point. Never return." Anger twisted Steele's face. Your own death warrant was just signed. He indicated his soldiers. Burn it. Burn everything. However, many police cruisers turned onto the street just as the bikers were moving to comply, thanks to Detective Ashworth's surveillance squad. The Dark Knight's effort at intimidation was foiled, and they were forced to flee. As he got on his bike, Steele said, "This isn't over." "No," Hannah said in a low voice. "It's only the beginning." When the group had left, Claire came over from her vantage point. "What a show that was. Where did you learn such a move?" Hannah dodged with ease, taking a self-defense course at the community college. "Good luck." "Correct." Claire didn't seem to believe it for a moment, judging by her tone. "Be careful, Hannah. According to my sources, Steele has the support of a powerful person." "Political defense." Hannah retorted, "You can deal with politicians," recalling some of the materials Mike had attached to his intelligence. "Once you've worked on the muscle." Hannah kept an eye on the Dark Knight's reaction all day. Their monitoring style shifted. Now more professional, employing methods she knew from the military. The situation was getting worse as Steele called in resources. A text message from an unidentified number buzzed through her phone. "They are now paying attention to you. We're meeting this evening. Peterson's Diner. Midnight." Hannah identified the pattern in the numbers. Mike Collins was in town now. Everything was coming together. Sophie looked closely at her mother's face at school pickup. "Did you thwart the villains?" "Not just yet, dear." Hannah assisted her daughter in getting into the vehicle. "However, I proved to them that they had chosen the wrong town. The incorrect family." Hannah got ready for her midnight meeting that night. Arranging tools she hadn't used in years. The Dark Knights believed they had discovered a simple target. Rather, they'd set off a reaction they couldn't have predicted. Hannah had something more valuable than Steele's political support. No one could recognize the training and abilities that had made her an operational legend. The Dark Knights would discover why certain people were better left alone before she was finished. And why certain predators were deadly without flashing their teeth. Hannah stepped out of the shadows into Peterson's Diner, which was silent and gloomy. Observing that the area is being watched by 3 Dark Knight surveillance squads. Mike Collins made a wise decision. For secret gatherings, the diner's basement had a tunnel system reminiscent of the Prohibition era. She saw Mike's autograph right away. A safe entry point is marked by a certain arrangement of stones by the back door. The former Marine Force recon operative was waiting in the dark inside. Since their previous mission together, he has developed new scars on his face. Hannah said softly, "You look like hell. I had to battle through the intelligence to get here, and you should see it." Mike laid out pictures on a table. "Hannah, Dark Knights are more than simply a gang. They are the muscle for a bigger job. Take a look at these Eagles Point land transactions." The images demonstrated the methodical purchase of properties following the intimidation efforts of the Dark Knights. Shell businesses. All pointing to the same company. Blackstone Development. Hannah understood they were building a passageway. Assuming command of key areas of the state highway network. Eagles Point is situated near the intersection. Ideal location for distribution of anything they're actually transferring. Mike gestured toward the surveillance images. Steele now employs 3 former Special Forces operators. They have some major hardware coming in. Hannah's phone vibrated, interrupting their conversation. Her home security system sent out an alert. Members of the Dark Knights were advancing on the town. Mike noted that they were beginning their reaction. A hit list of all those who have opposed them. Hannah was on her feet already. First up is Peterson's Diner. At the town council meeting, Jack voiced his opposition to them. Several motorcyclists rode up to the diner outside. Steele took the lead himself, joined by 2 unfamiliar people Hannah had never seen before. Mike had warned about mercenaries. They had excellent military training evident in the way they moved. Hannah told Mike to take the back. "I'll take care of the front." The night air conveyed Steele's voice plainly. "Set an example and torch it." Hannah was not anticipated by the original Dark Knight. He came over with a Molotov cocktail 1 minute. The next, he was dropped with mechanical precision, unconscious. At the sound, the second turned, but the outcome was the same. One of the mercenaries drew a concealed weapon and spun with amazing reflexes. Hannah's reaction was just automatic. A smooth succession of blows that incapacitated and disarmed the man before he could pull the trigger. "Report from the ghost team." Steele's voice was tinged with worry. He was met with silence. Hannah went through the darkness, removing his perimeter security one piece at a time. More Dark Knights fell silently in the back, demonstrating Mike's skill. Steele, at last seeing the situation, ordered them to pull back. "Now everyone back off." Hannah recovered the incendiary devices they had left behind as motorcyclists thundered into the darkness. Top-notch military gear. Additional evidence of strong support. Mike stepped out of the shadows and said, "They'll hit other targets." This was only the first. Hannah's cell rang. "Detective Ashworth. The Dark Knights are going to different places. Garcia's supermarket. Chen's drugstore. The primary school." Hannah immediately concluded that the school was a distraction. "They are aware that I will reply there." "Mike. I have the pharmacy and the grocery," he said. "Those mercs weren't anticipating opposition tonight, so keep an eye on your back. They'll be ready next time." Hannah noticed a rise in the number of Dark Knights as she traveled on back roads toward the school. They had rapidly adjusted, creating overlapping observation areas. Expertly done work. When she arrived at the school, Doom and 3 other people were setting up charges at the main door. Their method validated military instruction. Hannah moved in quietly, employing angles and shadows she had studied in a dozen combat zones. An elementary school is charged with a demonstration. They spun toward her voice as she spoke quietly. "James, even for you, that's a new low." Doom's expression changed from recognition to terror. "It's only damage to property. A warning. No more." Hannah shifted. The altercation lasted only a few seconds. Accurate hits. Economic mobility. Complete effectiveness. At its conclusion, for Dark Knights, their own zip ties fastened to them, lay moaning on the ground. The phone rang for Hannah. "Mike reports that the other locations are working well." However, Detective Ashworth sent a second telegram with more dire news. "Everyone has been summoned in by Steele. A gathering of all members at the clubhouse. There's going to be a big event." Hannah greeted Mike and Claire in their backup position, and Dawn came over. The detective had a serious expression. "We have more serious issues," Claire said. "I recently learned why the Dark Knights receive such positive political press. Steele's brother is a judge. He has been manipulating property seizures, burying cases, and undermining the integrity of the entire court system. That clarifies the trend." Mike looked over his intelligence. "They are constructing infrastructure in addition to occupying land. Legal foundation for a larger project." Over Eagle's Point, Hannah watched the sun rise. The ramifications of her tactical mental processing. The Dark Knights were meticulous in their planning. Gaining control using a variety of methods. Economic, criminal, and legal. However, they had committed a crucial error. Her daughter had been threatened by them. Hannah remarked quietly that Steele's brother provides them with protection. Judges, however, might also be compromised. Particularly those that finance militia organizations through offshore accounts. Claire's gaze expanded. "How did you?" To put it mildly, Mike's intelligence is extensive. Hannah looked at her phone. Sophie's safety at school was confirmed by Mrs. Chen. It's time to demonstrate to them the consequences of bringing a gang to a shadow war. The Dark Knights assembled in force across town. Steele was preparing his response as their clubhouse was humming with activity. They believed that their political connections and sheer numbers made them unbeatable. They were going to acquire knowledge in a new way. For Hannah Anderson had not been the most successful covert operator in the Marine Corps for 20 years by battling fairly. Force wasn't always used to win wars. They were obtained by patience, accuracy, and the strategic use of leverage in the appropriate locations. This was the battlefield that the Dark Knights had selected. How the fight was waged, however, would be up to Hannah. At dawn, the assault started. Businesses that had rejected their protection racket were the targets of the Dark Knights' motorbikes as they drove into Eagles Point in force. Garcia's grocery has broken windows. Chen's pharmacy caught fire. It was an obvious message. Burn or submit. Hannah, however, had expected this. Former Marines were waiting for motorcycles as they arrived at Peterson's diner. Overnight, Mike Collins had been organizing veterans in the area. Disciplined opposition to the Dark Knights' intimidation methods was encountered. Mike reported over their secure channel that they are no longer merely thugs. These men have professional gear and military training. From her observation location, Hannah observed the coordination of the attacks by Steele's lieutenants. Their coordinated strikes, intended to overwhelm the local police response, demonstrated obvious tactical training. Her cell rang. Detective Ashworth. Everyone who opposed the Dark Knights has had their accounts frozen by emergency orders that Judge Harrison recently ordered. Now, they're applying legal pressure. Send out the files, Hannah said. Judge Harrison's corruption, offshore accounts, ties to extremist organizations, and proof of a coordinated criminal enterprise were all extensively documented in Mike's intelligence. The local media was inundated with disclosures in a matter of hours. As journalists exposed decades of wrongdoing, Judge Harrison's career fell apart. The legal protection for the Dark Knights started to erode. Sophie embodied her mother's enthusiasm at Eagles Point Elementary. The 6-year-old grouped younger kids into the safety procedures Hannah had taught her when Dark Knights members tried to threaten classmates during playtime. Like her mother, Sophie gave the order through the buddy system doors, quickly and quietly, within. Even as she took action to eliminate the threat, Hannah's pride grew as she watched security cameras. The riders encountered an empty playground and the daughter of a former Marine sniper, who had discovered more than they had anticipated. After securing the school boundary, Mike joined Hannah and said, "Your kid's something else. Her mother must have given it to her." Hannah answered, "She gets it from knowing what's right." Steele is becoming unmanageable. His enforcer squads are disobeying orders. Becoming careless. Yes, the well-planned attack by the Dark Knights had turned into a riot. Local police took strong action against their operations without Judge Harrison's protection. Vehicles, guns, and documents were confiscated by Claire's task team. "Claire called you urgently, Hannah. I just discovered something in their files. It's not simply pharmaceuticals they're running. Trafficking in human beings. Pine Valley has 3 missing girls. Tonight, they're transporting them." Implications were assimilated by Hannah's tactical mind. They have been protecting the highway corridor. It isn't limited to pharmaceuticals. It's a pipeline. Over intercepted exchanges, Steele's voice cracked. Clubhouse now with full membership. Anyone who doesn't show up within 30 minutes is dead. Members hurried to answer, and the clubhouse of the Dark Knights erupted with activity. However, Hannah was also ready for this. Mike's veterans kept an eye on things, recording all the arrivals. "They're afraid," Mike said. "They are now being held in line at gunpoint by Steele's enforcers." Through powerful optics, Hannah saw Steele's organization start to fall apart. As their legal protections dwindled, some members tried to escape. The more aggressive factions demanded swift retribution. Hannah told Mike to open the second packet. The local media was inundated with more material. Evidence linking the Dark Knights to organized crime, property theft, and disappearances. Even Hannah was taken aback by the response from the community. People started organizing opposition under the leadership of Mrs. Chen and Jack Peterson. Members of the Dark Knights encountered unified resistance when they tried to intimidate others further. As volunteers assisted in clearing away broken glass, Garcia declared, "They hit my store, we rebuild together. We no longer feel fear." Steele's reaction was expected. Intensification. More mercenaries showed up with military-grade weaponry in their cars. Hannah, however, had also expected this. "Go now, Claire," she said. Using evidence from Judge Harrison's files to support seizures, the detectives' task team stopped shipments of firearms at county lines. As they watched members of the Dark Knights quarrel outside their clubhouse, Mike said, "You've got them boxed in." Supply connections being interrupted, community opposition, and legal pressure. Hannah clarified, "Not boxed in, focused. Everything in one location for the next step." Her cell rang. Mike's most reliable veterans are keeping Sophie safe at Mrs. Chen's house. Claire then sent another message. "The files of Judge Harrison are of interest to the FBI. Incoming is a federal task force." Hannah took one last look at her gear. Everything was in its proper position. As anticipated, Steele had gathered his remaining forces, gathering them all under one roof. As Mike watched more bikes arrive at the clubhouse, he said, "They still outnumber us." Recalling lessons from much more deadly fights, Hannah retorted, "Numbers don't win battles. Position does. Intelligence does. Will does." Steele was furious with his assembled members across town and called for a violent reaction. However, his power was eroding. Without Judge Harrison's defense and without their go-to strategies functioning, the Dark Knights encountered an unexpected situation. Organized opposition. The phone rang for Hannah. A call from an unidentified number. "Bitch, you're dead. Also, everyone you care about. Now there are no rules." She displayed the message to Mike. Steele is no longer in control. They're being replaced by the violent ones. Excellent. Mike grinned icily. Implies that they will be foolish. Predictable. Hannah saw their organization disintegrate into disarray as additional Dark Knights showed up at their clubhouse. Everything was going just how she had intended. Superior troops and firepower did not win all conflicts. They were gained by precisely positioning your adversary and then allowing them to demolish themselves. The Dark Knights believed that assembling their forces demonstrated power. Rather, they had consolidated all of their weaknesses in a single location. They would discover tomorrow why that was a deadly error. In real time, Steele lost control of the Dark Knights. As Shark led a violent section in defying their leader's authority, Hannah observed through her surveillance feed as the gang's clubhouse descended into turmoil. Shark yelled, his face inches from Steele's, "You've gone soft. You contact attorneys because one woman makes us appear weak." Divided loyalties were visible in the postures of the assembled members as they shuffled nervously. Outside, Hannah counted 30 motorcycles. The whole local membership of the gang gathered in one place. Mike reported over their tactical channel that there were 7 hostiles on perimeter watch. 15 more inside, the majority armed. 5 more mercenaries have been brought in by Steele. Hannah's cell rang. "Detective Ashworth. FBI task force postponed. Political favors were called in by Judge Harrison. For the next 24 hours, we are on our own." Sophie experienced her own crises at Eagles Point Elementary. During recess, 2 members of the Dark Knights came up and tried to communicate with the kids. Hannah's daughter, however, had learned a lot. Sophie was in charge of the smaller children now, and her voice had the same understated authority as her mother's. Through the friend doors, as we had previously practiced. The gang members were confronted by vacant playground equipment and school surveillance cameras that captured their attempts to threaten children. More proof to support Claire's claim. Mike, keeping an eye on the school situation, noted that your girl had the potential to be a leader. Carries her mother's traits. Hannah answered that she follows in the footsteps of someone who is morally upright. But her voice was tainted by pride. Veteran status. In place. Garcia's group is keeping an eye on the east side. The south belongs to Peterson's crew. Everybody is prepared and armed. Hannah's surveillance revealed that the internal strife within the Dark Knights was intensifying. The most violent members of Shark's side called for quick action. Steele's tactical restraint efforts failed. Do you want anything to do? At last, Steele lost it. All okay, everybody rides. We hit every single thing. Houses, shops, and schools. Burn everything. Tell this town what happens if they don't comply. Hannah, however, had also expected this. Her idea started to take shape as bikes roared to life in the clubhouse parking lot. Thanks to Peterson's staff, the first wave of riders discovered that their path was obstructed by abandoned cars. The second group faced comparable challenges. Confusion quickly replaced the Dark Knight's attempted display of force. They're separating, Mike said. Like you said, in small groups. Through her scope, Hannah observed the disintegration of the gang's formation. Steele made his way downtown with his core group. As intended, Shark's faction began to splinter off toward residential areas. Hannah told Claire to go on the clubhouse instantly. Other than their weapons cache, it is empty. The detectives' task squad moved swiftly, confiscating documents and illegal weaponry arsenals. However, Steele's office was where the actual reward was concealed. Thorough documentation of the gang's activities, including their network of human trafficking. Claire's voice was urgent, you must see this. Moving girls around Eagles Point isn't all they do. They are providing political extortion. Images and videos. Half of the state legislature has been corrupted. Tracking Steele's crew as they approached downtown, Hannah analyzed this information. There was more to the Dark Knights than merely a gang. They worked as enforcers for a bigger illegal organization. The initial wave of motorcyclists encountered concerted resistance from Jack's veterans inside Peterson's diner. Tactical expertise gained in more deadly battles was applied by former Marines and Army Rangers. Professionals responded to the gang's attempt at intimidation. These are not merely citizens defending themselves. Watching his men go, Steele's voice suddenly contained genuine terror. They've been trained by someone. The phone rang for Hannah. A call from an unidentified number. You have initiated an unwinnable war. Everybody has a weakness. Even single mothers with military experience. The danger was obvious, but Hannah had also foreseen it. Steele's company was directed into positions that were ready as they got closer to the town center. Combat-experienced veterans had created overlapping firing zones. Mike verified that they were stuck. Only the exits we've left them are available. Hannah saw the Dark Knights recognize their predicament via her scope. Steele's ability to spot the trap demonstrated his tactical training. However, driven by fury rather than planning, Shark's group advanced. Shark's men fired the initial shots. Uncontrolled, wild fire that put humans in peril. Hannah's answer was exact and measured. 2 well-placed rounds rendered bikes inoperable without endangering riders. Mike ordered the Ghost Squad to move in. His veterans came out of hiding, their cooperation displaying their war experience. Hannah noticed Steele and his core group sneaking away in the turmoil, heading for a specified objective, as the Dark Knight's attempted display of force disintegrated into retreat. Hannah's voice was urgent, Claire. Examine the judge's records. Which properties close to the school are owned by Blackstone Development? Her fears were validated by the detective's response. The playground is directly visible from 3 buildings. Since the gang began forcing companies to sell, they have been deserted. Hannah was on her feet already. Steele still had his mercenaries, but he had lost command of his gang. She was now aware of their true objective. "Combine downtown, Mike," she said. "Bring your task force to the school, Claire. I'll take care of Steele." Not all battles were won by superior troops or weaponry. They were gained by recognizing and exploiting your adversary's desperation. Steele believed that the best way to restore authority was to frighten children. Rather, he was going to discover why some boundaries should never be violated, particularly when interacting with a mother who had dedicated 20 years to mastering the art of danger elimination. With military accuracy, Steele's convoy advanced on Eagles Point Elementary. In order to create overlapping fields of fire, 3 SUVs carrying his most devoted enforcers and mercenaries are coming from various directions. Steele, lacking practice, inspected his guns in the lead vehicle. "The police station is being hit by Sharks Group, boss." Hammer used their communications to report. "The town is preoccupied. We can now proceed." However, Hannah was aware of their strategies before they were used. She had already set up shop in St. Michael's Church Bell Tower, which provided excellent visibility of all accesses to the school. "How are the veterans doing, Mike?" Through her secret line, she inquired. "At the station, interacting with Shark's sons. Detective Ashworth is able to contain them. They're now utilizing military-grade weapons, though, Hannah. They got some big hardware from someone." Steele's cars drew closer to their positions, as Hannah peered through her scope. With expert deployment, his mercenaries established covering zones around the perimeter of the school. This violence was no longer limited to gangs. The operation was military in nature. Sophie proved to be her mother's daughter throughout the school. With surprising poise, the 6-year-old assisted in organizing younger youngsters while teachers initiated emergency lockdown procedures. Do you recall the game of silence? Kindergartners hiding in the library were informed by Sophie. "As our mother taught us. We win more quickly if we keep quiet." As Hannah monitored targets with her scope, pride filled her heart. Every exit was covered by shooting positions set up by Steele's soldiers. Her suspicions were validated by their method. These weren't merely hired shooters. They were once special forces. Hannah's voice contained a subdued desperation. "Claire. What did you discover regarding military contractors in the judge's files?" According to the detective, Blackstone Development has ties to private military firms. In 3 states, they have started using former Special Forces operators to provide security consultancy. Hannah witnessed Steele's mercenaries deploy without consultation. They are constructing a private military. Her cell rang. "Mike is transmitting pictures of the weapons found on Dark Knight's members that were apprehended. Tactical gear, communication devices, and military-grade guns shouldn't be accessible to civilian organizations." As Steele and his core team made their way to the main entrance of the school, Hannah said, "They're moving." They were in the ideal position, covering all angles and moving in unison. These people are SEALs, former Deltas, or Tier 1 operators. Are you able to manage them? There was real concern in Mike's query. Hannah grinned icily. I'm better, and they're good too. Hannah was ready when Steele's team broke through the school's entrance without enough rehearsal. They were directed into designated hallways by automatically locking emergency doors. Their movements were monitored by motion sensors, which sent information to her phone. Steele ordered his perimeter team to hold position. Anderson's child is the primary aim. We have power over the mother, find her. However, Sophie had already started to move, guiding her group of kids along paths Hannah had shown her. Exits for emergencies that weren't shown in the construction designs. Only a mother who had spent 3 years preparing for this situation knew the paths. Hannah's initial shot was a magnificent example of accuracy. She fired a single round from more than 400 yards, through a window opening that was only 8 inches wide, and disrupted Steele's communication equipment. Instantly, the mercenaries responded. As they looked for shelter, their training was obvious. Hannah, however, had picked her role wisely. They were unable to escape the fields of fire and angles that the bell tower afforded. "Make a high contact," a mercenary yelled, but Hannah's second shot, which deliberately struck his body armor, hushed him. Not killing him, but taking him out of the battle. Steele's own training was demonstrated by his response. "Fong, hammer. Put an end to that stance. Secure the main objective now, everyone else." However, the Dark Knights encountered unanticipated opposition. Inside defensive positions have been set by Mike's veterans. Protecting evacuation routes, former Marines skillfully engaged the mercenaries. Hannah ordered Claire to disable another mercenary and proceed to the judge's office. "He is going to destroy evidence," the investigator said, done, with delight. "I obtained his entire network, including all of the names, dates, accounts, and other details that linked Blackstone Development to the human trafficking scheme." Hannah saw Steele recognize that his position was in jeopardy via her scope. His political protection was vanishing, his gang was disintegrating, and his mercenaries were pinned down. "Burn it," he ordered. His voice now carried genuine urgency. "Burn everything. Make a lasting impression on them." However, his troops came across Sophie Anderson as they shifted to obey. With her mother's serene assurance, the 6-year-old stood in the hallway, facing armed men. Sophie's voice could be heard clearly on Hannah's surveillance feed as she declared, "My mom says you're not very good at this. Real soldiers protect people," she says. "They do not harm children." The child's poise startled the mercenaries, causing them to pause. Hannah only needed that moment of doubt. Her subsequent shots were quick successions. Devastating, professional, and accurate. Steele's surviving crew was destroyed in a matter of seconds. Although it prevented the impact of well-placed shots, body armor saved lives. Mike reported from his location that contact was down. There were no civilian casualties and all hostiles were neutralized. Steele knew where he was, and Hannah looked through her scope. His operation was exposed, his backup was gone, and his soldiers were down. However, she noticed something else as well. A man in need, digging into his jacket for something. Switch of the dead man. She recognized the gadget at once. Blast radius potential, Claire. The entire east wing of the school, according to the weaponry found. Hannah's next attempt would need to be flawless. Taking elevation and wind into consideration, through a window, past support columns. No one could recognize the type of shot that had made her an operational legend. Some battles were won by superior force. Others using more effective strategies or tools. Sometimes, though, it was just a single shot when everything was on the line. Hannah Anderson has been practicing for those moments for 20 years. Steele didn't even see the source of the gunfire. As tactical teams secured the area, police lights blazed throughout Eagles Point Elementary. Mike's veterans were encircling Steele's neutralized mercenaries, who were zip-tied. When they realized how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered, their professional manner was disrupted. With little preparation, Hannah walked around the school's hallways, inspecting every room. She stopped outside the library when she heard children singing. During the lockdown, Sophie led her group in peaceful songs to help them stay composed. "Mom always says being brave means helping others not be scared," Sophie said, referring to our drills. Hannah and Detective Ashworth met at the main door. Her face was serious. "I discovered this in Steele's car." She gave a laptop to him. "Records of finances. Manifests for shipping." The Dark Knights were only the tip of the iceberg. Hannah, this is really deep. Mike joined them, his combat-worn military gear clearly visible. The group of sharks is contained. 15 in custody, 2 dead. They made an attempt to rush to the police station. It didn't work out for them. Hannah nodded, already considering the ramifications of the information that had been found. What's in those records, Claire? Purchasing real estate is only one aspect of Blackstone development. They are constructing private airfields, covert facilities, and infrastructure. Through blackmail, the Dark Knights were supplying both political clout and physical strength. Mike inquired, we now have evidence that links their operation to half of the state police command structure, 3 state senators, and a federal judge. Claire forced a somber grin. This is going to give the FBI a field day. Hannah saw as medical personnel attended to the wounded mercenary. Her assumptions were validated by their guns and equipment. Top-tier operators with specialized skill sets, most likely former Delta Force personnel. Mike quietly reported that he had found something else. Records of communications. Someone higher up was receiving Steele's reports. Weekly reports on the supervision of the project. A clandestine operation of some sort. Mom. As Sophie led her group of kids out to parents who were waiting, her voice could be heard clearly across the parking lot. Hannah knelt down to give her daughter a hug while carefully examining her. My dear, you did a fantastic job. Similar to how we practiced. Sophie smiled, I remembered everything you taught me. I also assisted others in remembering. Many parents stopped to thank Hannah as they hurried to pick up their kids. Although the neighborhood was clearly grateful, she saw anxious looks at the military-grade weapons that the police were cataloging. Anderson, Ms. Jack Peterson came forward, his veteran's demeanor clear. The Dark Knights clubhouse was secured by my team. I found something worth seeing. Their discovered material presented a troubling image. Blackstone Development did more than simply purchase real estate. They were taking control of key areas throughout the state. Their enforcement arm had been the Dark Knights, who used threats and violence to compel sales. Claire gestured to the seized paperwork and said, look at these shipping schedules. Shell corporations are used to arrange routine movements through distant airfields, human trafficking, weaponry, and drug trafficking. Hannah's cell rang. A call from an unidentified number. You've ruined a highly successful business, Ms. Anderson. The Dark Knights could be replaced. What follows won't be. As Mike watched police channels, he noticed that they were already taking action to contain this. The suicide of Judge Harrison was just reported. Regarding their business, Steele's brother will not be testifying. Hours after the crisis was over, Hannah saw FBI cars finally pull into Eagles Point. Her suspicions regarding high-level meddling were validated by their tardy response. She told Claire to get copies of everything to safe places. Your veterans keep the watch, Mike. It's not over yet. Claire's voice was worried, Hannah. According to these documents, private contractors, former special forces, and the military support Blackstone's operation has. 3 states are home to its training facilities. Excellent. Hannah gave a chilly response. Implies that they will be fully aware of the situation they are in. Sophie pulled at the hand of her mother. Must we depart? Hannah's gaze lowered to her daughter. The community then gathered around them. Jack Peterson is in charge of planning the cleaning. Mrs. Chin giving weary veterans coffee. Children being hugged by their parents. Neighbors supporting one another. No, darling, she said. This is our house, and we keep it safe. Once more, her phone vibrated. One more caution. You've created formidable foes. We are all flawed. Even single mothers with military experience. But Hannah Anderson had learned one important lesson over the course of 2 decades. The predators that were hiding in plain sight were perhaps the most dangerous. Although they had been vanquished, the Dark Knights were only the outward sign of a more serious corruption. Steele's gang was one of the throwaway assets that Blackstone Development used to build their criminal enterprise. They would now understand what happened when they saw someone who was unbreakable, unbullied, and unbuyable. Sophie watched FBI officers take pictures of evidence and questioned, "Mom, is the bad guy going to return?" Even as her strategic mind started making plans, Hannah gave her daughter a tight embrace. "Sweetheart, different bad guys may try, but they will all end up with the same lesson." Because Hannah Anderson had not fought fairly to become the most effective operator in the Marine Corps. She had accomplished this by being more accurate, patient, and intelligent than her rivals. Blackstone believed that their exposure would be limited if the Dark Knights were eliminated. Rather, they had just set themselves up as the next target. Hannah was also incredibly skilled at hitting targets. At dawn, Blackstone Development responded. With individuals whose moves suggested intensive military training, 3 unmarked SUVs pulled into Eagles Point. Although they moved with the synchronized accuracy of special operations teams, they were dressed in ordinary clothes. As they set up surveillance posts around strategic points, Hannah kept an eye on everything via her scope. Peterson's diner, the police station, and the school. Compared to the Dark Knight's amateur attempts at intimidation, their method was perfect. Mike evaluated the professional wetwork crew while looking through binoculars. Former special forces, most likely foreign contractors. The purpose of these men is not to threaten. Their purpose is to solve issues. Hannah's cell rang. "Claire is transmitting pictures of the papers that were found in Judge Harrison's office. Discovered something. Blackstone is constructing something, not merely purchasing real estate. Take a look at these building permits." A pattern emerged from the plans. Specialized facilities and key places are connected by well-guarded transportation lines. The Dark Knights had been protecting territory for something more than mere muscle. "Mom." Sophie was eating breakfast in the kitchen when her voice could be heard. "Is our house being watched by the new bad guys?" At her daughter's perspective, Hannah grinned. "Yes, dear. However, do you recall what I taught you about being observed? Watch them return," Sophie said. "Recognize their trends. Everybody has routines. My daughter is that." Through their secure line, Mike's voice cracked. At the north checkpoint, movement. A 2-person crew is attempting to enter the water treatment facility. Expert infiltration equipment. Hannah was on her feet already. The water plant, which was ideal for monitoring or for managing vital infrastructure, overlooked important town entrances. She had foreseen this, planning defenses during the Dark Knight's battle. She was unexpected by the Blackstone team. Hannah had spent years honing the art of undetectable approach, but their skill was superb. Both operators were rendered unconscious after 2 fast blows and carefully placed pressure points. "These aren't contractors," Hannah said, looking at their tools. "This is high-end equipment, military prototypes." "Hannah." Claire's tone was urgent. Something was just discovered in Steele's files. The board of directors of Blackstone. All of them were once military intelligence. Black Ops backgrounds. The ramifications were obvious. Blackstone was more than just a criminal organization with former military personnel. It was an operation conducted by those who were knowledgeable about clandestine warfare. Sophie demonstrated at Eagles Point Elementary that her mother's teachings were worthwhile. She arranged her pals into regular movement patterns when she noticed surveillance teams observing the playground, making it impossible to follow individual kids. Mike reported the status. 4 additional groups made it inside the town limits. A perimeter is being established. Traditional confinement protocol for special operations. Hannah observed other Blackstone operators deploying through her scope. Her concerns were verified by the way they moved. These were not mercenaries alone. They were highly skilled military personnel. What more did you learn about their organization, Claire? Schedules for construction. Does the supply appear? They're constructing a private military facility, Hannah. Training grounds that are passed off as industrial locations. The Dark Knights were only clearing the area in Phase 1. Hannah got a message on her phone. Fantastic effort with our advanced team. Maybe we could talk about terms. Our company would benefit from your skill set. Hannah's answer was straightforward. Not intrigued. I feel sorry. You ought to be aware. Your military service is documented in very extensive documentation that we have obtained. Impressive track record, despite the fact that some missions are still highly classified. Mom. Sophie's tone was urgent. Once more, there are black automobiles at school. However, they are not the same as before. Hannah watched new Blackstone teams deploy via her scope. They were obviously trained in military intelligence based on their movement and equipment. These were men accustomed to working in the dark, collecting intelligence, and removing danger. According to Mike, they are no longer only observing. They are getting ready for something. Coordinated positions and several teams. Implications were assimilated by Hannah's tactical mind. This suggested that Blackstone had given up on nuance and had gone straight to military-style operations. Claire, look at the nearby county's satellite pictures. Keep an eye out for supply concentrations and vehicle movements. Her fears were validated by the detective's response. There is a significant mobilization in progress. Protocols for professional military transport. Hannah. This appears to be the start of a full-scale tactical operation. As additional Blackstone squads took up positions across Eagles Point, Hannah observed. They were experts, carrying out a traditional special operations plan. Separate, manage, and get rid of opposition. However, they had committed a crucial error. They believed they were apex predators because of their military training. That they were ready for any opposition because of their Black Ops experience. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had honed the art of invisible warfare for 20 years. Someone who had received specialized training in hunting other hunters. Prepare your veterans, Mike. Hannah gave the order. Work with FBI connections, Claire. One you personally trust. Sweetheart, Sophie. Yes, Mother. Do you recall what I told you about the distinction between warriors and soldiers? Sophie recited that soldiers use weapons to battle. Warriors use their thoughts to fight. As Hannah observed Blackstone's teams continuing their deployment, she grinned. Among the top in their industry, they were good. I'm leaving. However, they were going to discover that certain predators were more adept than others at blending in with their surroundings. Additionally, some hunters focused on taking out other experts. At exactly 0600 hours, the first shot was fired. One shot from a silenced rifle, aimed at the communications array of the police station. Hannah recognized the method right away. Target areas are isolated using a standard special operations methodology. Mike reported via their secret line that several squads were in motion. Expert formations and top-notch military gear. Tier 1 operators are these folks. Through her scope, Hannah observed Blackstone's teams carrying out their mission with meticulous precision. Establishing control posts at strategic crossings, four-man units move in synchronized patterns. They had perfect technique. It was just what she would anticipate from former Special Forces contractors. Hannah's voice was urgently focused. Claire. How are you doing on the FBI task force? Administrative problems caused a delay. The detective was clearly frustrated. The federal reaction is being impeded by Blackstone's political connections. We're alone. Sophie showed why she was her mother's daughter at Eagles Point Elementary. The evacuation of the school was well underway when Blackstone teams tried to set up monitoring posts. Coordinated by a 6-year-old who had learned from her mother more than just emergency procedures. Sophie led her students in fire drills, 2 by 2. Don't forget to keep quiet. As Hannah followed Blackstone's operatives through her scope, her pride was subdued by tactical necessity. Their apparatus validated her judgment. Advanced communications, specialized weapons, and prototype military equipment. This team was more than just security. This special operations unit was completely furnished. Mike's voice was caution, Hannah. Some sort of electronic warfare kit is being used. We could lose communications. I get it. Carry out the Sierra pattern. Claire, start the backup procedures. The veterans moved to prearranged locations throughout the town in a professional and efficient manner. Hannah had trained local defenders in military-grade counter-surveillance skills for months in anticipation of this scenario. Her phone displayed a message. Last caution, Ms. Anderson, you have a great military record, but you are vastly outnumbered. Now withdraw. Make sure that your daughter is safe. Hannah's response was action-oriented. She used surgical accuracy to cripple the electronic warfare vehicle with her first shot, immobilizing it without risk of explosion through the transmission case. Before the operators could react, her second and third bullets rendered them ineffective. Speak with North. As the communications failed, Mike's voice broke. Heavy weapons, professional team. Hannah moved as Blackstone's operators launched their attack. They had a very good technique. Perfect target discrimination, professional movement patterns, and coordinated fire. However, they had committed a critical error. They believed they had a veteran Marine sharpshooter on their trail. They were unaware that they were being pursued by a person who had made it their mission to kill other experts. Hannah directed Claire as she shifted to her next role. Follow the containment protocol exactly as we intended. Town emergency systems responded to the detectives' intervention by sending out a pre-programmed signal that started automated lockdowns of critical infrastructure. Suddenly, Blackstone's team discovered that their well-prepared approach routes were barred. They moved into kill zones that had been planned. Sophie's voice came over Hannah's earpiece, Mom. The men are attempting to enter the school tunnels in their black automobiles. This was what Hannah had expected. Officially closed for decades, the school's maintenance tunnels made ideal infiltration routes. If you were unaware of the changes she had made, their military trainers would have been amazed by the advanced countermeasures the first Blackstone squad encountered. Mike's veterans, who had picked up more than just Hannah's fundamental strategies, faced the second team. Mike reported that he had several contacts down. But these men are good, extremely nice, Hannah. Hannah saw Blackstone's operators tweak their tactics via her scope. They started moving in a different, more hostile manner. They had realized they were up against professional resistance. What did you discover in the updated files, Claire? Blackstone's operations are more extensive than we initially believed. Secret projects and military contracts. These aren't just private military, Hannah. They have a Black Ops program going on. As Hannah eliminated another monitoring squad, she evaluated this information. Claire's assessment was validated by their methods and equipment. These troops had received more training than was typical for special forces. Sophie's voice was unexpectedly steely, Mom. You mentioned that professional troops demand everyone to fight like them, and I recall that. Proud of her daughter's wisdom, Hannah grinned. You're right, dear. What is their vulnerability, furthermore? Normal people aren't supposed to fight with intelligence rather than strength. As though to support her argument, Blackstone's personnel discovered that their well-prepared operation was running into unforeseen opposition. Local defenders displayed strategies that civilians shouldn't have been able to use. Instances of infrastructure failure indicated a deep understanding of counter-surveillance methods. Mike's urgent call went unanswered, Hannah. They're reorganizing and retreating, but something isn't right. The way they move. She also witnessed it. The withdrawal was too well planned and too accurate. This was no retreat. This was a prelude to something more significant. Check the satellite feeds, Claire. Keep an eye out for car movements outside the town limits. Her fears were validated by the detective's response. Significant mobilization and military transport procedures. It appears that Hannah is getting ready for a full-scale tactical attack. Through her scope, Hannah observed Blackstone's teams consolidating their positions. Among the top in their industry, they were good. They were strong opponents because of their experience, gear, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their evaluation. They believed that victory was assured by superior numbers and top-notch military hardware. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had studied how to hunt other hunters for 20 years. Hannah's voice was calm authority, all units. As we practiced, carry out Protocol Omega. Because superior firepower and tactical advantage weren't enough to win some wars. Realizing a basic reality won them over. The predators you didn't anticipate were the most dangerous. As Blackstone began their major attack, black tactical vehicles surged into Eagle's Point. 20 armored SUVs with complete tactical crews inside each were counted by Hannah. Their pattern of deployment suggested careful military preparation. This was an invasion, not merely an operation. Through increasingly erratic contacts, Mike reported that many teams were working on all of the main targets. They have switched to backup channels and blocked our police frequency. Through her scope, Hannah observed as skilled operators set up control points all across the town. Her greatest suspicions were validated by their movement and equipment. These were elite military groups run by private authority, not merely contractors. What is the current political scenario, Claire? We underestimated the severity. There was stress in the detective's voice. Discovered records that connected Blackstone to top-secret military initiatives. They are operating a sanctioned black operation, therefore they are more than just criminals. With amazing poise, Sophie managed the younger students at Eagles Point Elementary. Do you recall the hiding spots my mother showed us? She gave instructions. Just like in the silence game, keep quiet and remain motionless. Across from her, Hannah saw the first sniper team preparing in the bank building. They had a very good technique. Perfect firing angles and concealment. They were specifically hunting her. Hannah's voice was steady, all units. Use the delta dispersal pattern. Put your veterans in supporting roles, Mike. In response, the town's defenders lacked practice. They had been ready for this for 3 months thanks to Hannah's instruction. Following meticulously thought-out procedures, civilian volunteers move with almost military precision. Hannah. The static was Mike's warning. A specialized unit of some sort is being sent. I've never seen this equipment before. Hannah saw the new danger through her scope. Operators moving with the recognizable accuracy of elite special forces while donning cutting-edge tactical equipment. Their formation indicated a great deal of urban fighting experience. Sophie's voice came over their safe channel, Mom. We are no longer sought after by the men in the black cars. At the power plant, they are preparing a major setup. Implications were assimilated by Hannah's tactical mind. Claire, take another look at those building permits. Under the power facility, what was Blackstone constructing? I understand. Substantially strengthened sublevel that is hidden. Some sort of. Hannah. These specifications appear to be from a military command center. The town's north checkpoint was the scene of the first gunfight. Blackstone's personnel anticipated little opposition and launched a well-coordinated onslaught. Instead, they found Mike's veterans putting Hannah's defensive tactics into practice. Front of contact. Gunfire echoed Mike's voice. They're really, really good. Advanced tactics and military formation. Hannah dispatched the team of snipers with mechanical accuracy. No collateral damage, 3 targets, 3 shots. However, many were already taking up positions, exhibiting the type of tactical flexibility that resulted from a great deal of fighting experience. What more did you learn about their organization, Claire? Classified military requisitions and contracts. They're developing something big, Hannah. Privatized military facilities in several different states. It is more than just a target, Eagles Point. It is a key location. Hannah got a message on her phone. Well done, Ms. Anderson, on your defensive preparedness. You certainly earned your reputation in some clandestine operations. Last chance. Either get down or we'll use maximum force procedures. Hannah's response was action-oriented. Her subsequent rounds, which targeted particular components to impair their communications without endangering civilians, surgically damaged Blackstone's command vehicle. Mike reported urgently that several teams were convergent on the school. They have no intention of taking hostages. Under it, they're securing something. Hannah used her scope to observe Blackstone's operators following standard Special Forces procedures. Their actions, their gear, and their strategic choices. It all shouted highly skilled military personnel. Sophie's voice held unexpected wisdom. Mom. Do you recall the lesson you gave me about professional soldiers? About how they anticipate major battles every time. You're right, dear. Even as she dispatched another surveillance crew, Hannah maintained a smile. What is their vulnerability, furthermore? They overlook the fact that occasionally small fixes are more effective than large ones. As though to support her argument, Blackstone's meticulously prepared operation started to run into unforeseen opposition. Simple mechanical countermeasures hindered their sophisticated electronic warfare equipment. Basic infrastructural faults prevented them from moving tactically, which shouldn't have happened. Claire's voice was urgent. Hannah. Something was just discovered in their classified files. Point of the Eagle. It's more than just a target. They need something in this place. Something significant enough to put a Black Ops program at danger. Through her scope, Hannah observed further Blackstone units deploying throughout the town. They were decent, some of the nicest she had ever seen. They were strong opponents because of their experience, gear, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their strategic analysis. They believed that having better gear and training would ensure success. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had made a living by using their professional advantages against them. Every unit. Hannah had a gentle authority in her voice. Run the Omega procedure. Similar to how we practiced. Because superior firepower and tactical advantage weren't enough to win some wars. Realizing a basic reality won them over. The predators with the largest teeth were not always the most lethal. It was sometimes they who had discovered how to hunt more effectively rather than more forcefully. No public records had ever mentioned the underground facility beneath Eagles Point Power Station. Hannah realized why as she navigated reinforced hallways. This was more than a secret bunker. Long before Blackstone showed up, the command center was constructed to military standards. She muttered into her encrypted comm, Claire. In those confidential files, what do you see? The selection of Eagles Point was not arbitrary. Records of the Department of Defense, 1980s. Something was present. A crucial installation of some sort that never really existed. As Blackstone's operatives engaged Mike's defensive positions, gunfire reverberated across the town above. Hannah had been teaching the veterans these strategies for months, and they were holding their own. Mike said, "They're good," with the sound of battle audible in his voice. They're frustrated despite having top-notch equipment and skilled operators. Our defenses are not adhering to any recognized standard procedure. Sophie once again shone at the school why she was her mother's daughter. Blackstone personnel discovered an empty building when they tried to secure it. The youngsters had already left by paths not shown on the blueprint. Similar to Mom's unique hide-and-seek game, Sophie guided the smaller children as they navigated hidden passageways. Keep in mind that occasionally the wisest course of action isn't the most obvious one. In the lowest level of the facility, Hannah came across the first elite team. Their tactics and mobility were immaculate, just as she would have expected from elite special forces personnel. It was a quick, decisive, and completely silent battle. Claire's voice was urgent. "Hannah. According to these papers, Blackstone is more than just a private military business. They are a front for a larger scheme, a government program that is classified but has gone awry." Hannah observed additional Blackstone units deploying throughout the town with her tactical feed. Among their equipment were military prototypes that commercial contractors shouldn't have had access to. This was not only a business operation, state-level resources were being used without permission. Mike informed grimly that there were several casualties. "We're taking a lot of hits at the north checkpoint. Jack Peterson is still alive but in a poor way. These guys are no longer performing." As she made her way farther into the building, Hannah's intellect processed tactical data. Everything about the site, including the communication networks, security measures, and layout, suggested that this was a part of something considerably larger than Blackstone's illegal business. Sophie's voice was calm and clear. "Mom. The evil guys are no longer merely searching for victims. They're employing some sort of specialized equipment to look for anything unique. Claire, take another look at those DoD files. In the 1980s, what precisely was kept here?" "Hannah, I'm working on it. The majority of these files are still classified, but I find allusions to a strategic intelligence operation known as Project Oracle. The truth came out of the central room of the institution. Old computer banks, communication systems that have been hardened, and walls that have been reinforced to survive nuclear attacks. It was more than a command center. Blackstone was in dire need of a place to store Cold War artifacts. Discovered their goal." Hannah described looking through ancient intelligence files, sealed storage units, unapproved black projects, decades of classified activities, and operations that were officially never carried out. "Is that their target?" Mike's incredulity was evident. "For some ancient files, all of this." Recalling lessons from her own covert operations, Hannah retorted that knowledge is power, particularly knowledge that influential individuals would prefer to be suppressed. Her phone showed a fresh message. "Ms. Ander. Son, those files include some secrets that must be kept secret. Given your personal participation in similarly classified missions, you must understand." Hannah's history made sense. There were certain missions that had never been officially documented, and operations that focused on particular data rather than people. She had been a part of this world but had no idea how big it was. "Claire," there was a subtle desperation in her voice. "You should now send the files you have already deciphered to all of the main news outlets." "Completed already. These documents, Hannah, are revealing decades of illegal activities and criminal ventures masquerading as classified programs. Blackstone is not merely attempting to establish an empire. They are attempting to safeguard an existing one." Hannah observed Blackstone's operators modifying their tactics through her tactical stream. They had given up on securing the town. They were getting ready to attack the subterranean facility directly. She ordered all units to revert to secondary positions. "Allow them to approach us." Because Hannah Anderson had learned the most crucial thing during her 20 years of working in clandestine operations. The people with guns weren't always the biggest risks. At times, they were the secrets that those in positions of authority would murder to conceal. "Mom." Sophie's voice was full of assurance. "Do you recall the lesson you gave me about secrets?" Hannah grinned, anticipating the next move. "My dear, what did I teach you? The larger the secret, the more difficult it is for them to be exposed." Blackstone's operators were getting ready for their last assault around Eagle's Point. Among the greatest in their industry, they were professionals. They were strong opponents because of their experience, gear, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their evaluation. They believed that this had to do with information control. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had made a living by revealing precisely the kind of secrets they were attempting to keep hidden. Superior weaponry and tactical superiority weren't enough to win some wars. When the truth was the most deadly weapon of all, they were won by understanding. As Blackstone launched their last attack, Eagle's Point trembled with the sound of battle. With their cutting-edge tactical equipment designating them as elite troops, professional operators navigated the streets with military accuracy. This was no longer merely an operation. It was a full-scale conflict. With bursts of gunfire, Mike reported that the north perimeters were falling. Nothing is being held back by these guys now. Military-grade equipment and fighting strategies. We have several casualties. Hannah navigated the darkness of the subterranean complex, protecting decades of secret intelligence. Darker realities emerged from every file she looked at. Government scheming. Illegal businesses that pose as classified programs. Corruption that is at its worst. How is the media exposure going, Claire? The files will be made public. The news is being picked up by major networks. 3 federal agencies recently awarded emergency contracts to Blackstone's parent company, Hannah. They are attempting to retrospectively categorize everything. Sophie arranged the kids with amazing poise at the school's secret evacuation center. Do you recall what my mother said? Being brave can sometimes mean keeping others composed. Hannah came on to Blackstone's top teams in the main hallway of the building. They moved flawlessly. Their strategies were perfect. Just what she would anticipate from elite operators. However, they didn't anticipate a person who had received specialized training to undermine their methods. Claire's voice was urgent, Hannah. Their command structure was just identified. William Morton, the director of Blackstone and a former CIA Black Ops officer, was an expert at making issues vanish. Hannah watched further Blackstone troops converge on the underground facility through her tactical feed. They have military equipment prototypes that shouldn't be in use outside of classified programs. File recovery was no longer the exclusive goal. This had to do with deleting proof. We are unable to contain them. Mike spoke in a somber tone. The team of Jack Peterson is in disarray. Garcia's job is overcrowded. Hannah, they are professionals. They counter every move we make with better training. With her thoughts weighing her options, Hannah secured another set of files. The layout of the facility had been planned for just such a situation. Keeping expert recovery teams away from vital intelligence. Sophie's voice was steady, Mom. We recalled what you taught us about having backup plans for backup plans, even if the evil guys manage to find some of our hiding places. My daughter is that. What else have you discovered about Morton, Claire? He is more than just the director of Blackstone. He oversaw a CIA program that focused on unlawful interventions, unauthorized monitoring, and domestic activities. Everything his crew was never supposed to perform is documented in the files you're finding. Morton's real worry was exposed at the lowest level of the institution. Records of operations that never took place in reality. Lists of operatives who were not formally recognized. Evidence that might bring down entire government sectors, not just Blackstone. Mike reported that they were breaking through the main entrance. Expert demo teams. These men are something else entirely, not simply special forces. Hannah acknowledged their strategies and stated that they were Black Ops recovery squads. Professionals who can make witnesses and evidence vanish. Her phone showed a fresh message. Ms. Anderson, you have access to files that are beyond your authority. You must comprehend. For the sake of the greater good, some secrets must be kept hidden. Those files revealed Hannah's own past. She had participated in operations without fully understanding their objectives. Missions that had fulfilled Morton's covert plan. Claire's voice carried icy concentration. Upload all of your files and records. Even if they defeat me, the truth will still be out. Completed already. These documents aren't just revealing Blackstone, Hannah. Decades of illegal domestic operations are coming to light. Programs that, in the name of national security, targeted Americans. Hannah observed Blackstone's operators getting ready for their last push through her tactical feed. They had given up on securing the building. They were taking action to get rid of everyone who was aware of the reality. All units, she said. Run the Omega procedure. Similar to how we trained. Because the most important lesson had been learned by Hannah Anderson, who had endured 20 years of clandestine operations. The weapon you carried wasn't always the most lethal. Sometimes you had to reveal the truth. Mom. Sophie's voice was filled with total comprehension. Is this similar to the lesson you gave me on bullies? Regarding how they are at their strongest just before they fall. Hannah grinned as she readied herself to counter Blackstone's attack. Just like that, my dear. The larger they are, Sophie concluded, the harder they fall. Morton's operators were getting ready for their last assault around Eagle's Point. Among the greatest in their industry, they were professionals. They were strong opponents because of their experience, gear, and training. However, their operational assessment contained a crucial mistake. They believed this to be about using superior force to control information. They hadn't expected to go up against someone who had learned over the course of 2 decades that the strongest position wasn't usually the most clear. Not all conflicts were won by overwhelming force or tactical superiority. They were gained by knowing when to allow your adversary's greatest strength to turn into their greatest vulnerability. When Blackstone's forward teams went dark, it was the first indication that things had changed. They stopped talking, one by one. Positions became quiet. The enemy Morton's top operators had to contend with moved through their formations like a phantom. Hannah reported icily that target teams 1 through 4 were neutralized. Takedowns that are not fatal. They will awaken with sealed zip ties and headaches. Claire's voice was excited, Hannah. Large networks are being affected by the files. Committees of Congress are being established. Political protection from Morton is eroding. Mike used military precision to manage the town's defenders at the Emergency Command Center. As civilian volunteers implemented intricate defensive tactics that perplexed and split Blackstone's experienced operators, Hannah's months of preparation paid off. Observing through tactical feeds, Mike reported that they were retreating. Targets that fight wisely rather than hard are unfamiliar to these warriors. They are disintegrating their structures. Sophie arranged the kids into Hannah's rehearsed evacuation procedures in the school's secret shelter. As your mother once said, sometimes the best way to succeed is to be nowhere to be found. It was in the main corridor of the facility that Hannah came across Morton's personal security team. 6 individuals who are experts in close-quarters combat and were all former Black Ops. The battle lasted precisely 23 seconds. Claire's voice was urgent, Hannah. Morton is taking action. He has triggered an emergency procedure of some sort. Records are being deleted and military contracts are being terminated. His goal is to make Blackstone vanish. Hannah followed Morton's remaining men as they regrouped outside the facility's entrance through her tactical feeds. Their movement and gear betrayed a growing sense of desperation. The startling realization by professionals that they were not the most dangerous predators on the field. Mike affirmed that we have them confined. Your plan was successful. Too many resources were devoted to the primary attack. They have holes all throughout their perimeter. With her thinking 3 steps ahead, Hannah secured the final batch of important files. She had received training from Morton years prior in classified activities that were never carried out. She was now working against him with his own strategies. Sophie's voice was confident and clear, Mom. The criminals are fleeing the school. They would, as you mentioned, once they recognized that they were no longer the greatest threat. My daughter is that. What is Morton's role, Claire? His command vehicle is on its way to you, according to satellite tracking. He's bringing something hefty, Hannah. Unsuitable military prototype equipment. Morton was desperate, as seen by the surveillance feeds from the facility. His top teams were being neutralized and isolated in a methodical manner. A person who knew exactly how they worked exploited their superior training against them. Mike reported with satisfaction that they are retreating on all fronts. Your strategy was successful. They made every effort to seize the facilities. Everywhere else, they are now exposed. Acknowledging the trend, Hannah rectified without retreating. Focusing. For a last push, Morton is putting in his best operators. Her phone showed a fresh message. Anderson, you were among my finest pupils, but you've overlooked the most crucial lesson. There are secrets that are worth dying for. As was to be expected, Hannah said nothing. Although Morton had taught her for years, he was unaware of her true potential. She had spent those years learning how to oppose every strategy he taught, but she never realized it. Claire's tone was one of subdued power. Run Digital Protocol 0. Let everything go. Completed. The files are all over now, Hannah. Every news website, every major network. Morton is no longer able to bury this. Hannah observed Blackstone's last operators preparing for their last attack through her tactical feed. Among the greatest in their industry, they were professionals. However, they were also worn out, angry, and up against an unpredictable foe. All units, she said. As we intended, collapse the net. He always believed that Morton's superior resources and training ensured triumph because Hannah Anderson hadn't studied his strategies for 20 years without discovering his biggest flaw. Mom. Sophie's voice was filled with total comprehension. Is this similar to the lesson you gave me about large bullies? How come they never expect the young children to cooperate? As she waited for Morton to arrive, Hannah grinned. Just like that, my dear. What is the most significant aspect of bullies? Sophie recited that when people are most angry, they are at their weakest. Because they simply begin to react without thinking. Morton's remaining troops were getting ready for their last charge around Eagle's Point. Among the greatest in their industry, they were professionals. They were feared operators because of their experience, equipment, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their evaluation. They believed that having better resources and training would ensure success. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had devoted years to learning how to not just counter their strategies but also how to turn them against them. Better equipment or more force weren't enough to win some conflicts. They were won by realizing that the strongest opponent wasn't always the most dangerous. The person who knew how to turn that strength into a weakness was the one. In an armored convoy that shouted military authority, William Morton arrived at Eagle's Point. Each of the 3 highly customized SUVs is equipped with cutting-edge tactical equipment and elite operators. Hannah stared through her scope as her old mentor stepped out of the lead truck, his bearings still displaying the accuracy that had made him a legend in the CIA. Hannah reported via secure channels that target is present. Wearing prototype combat gear, the security detail consists of 4 men. These are now his personal guards, not merely operators. Claire's voice was urgent, Hannah. The final files were just made available to the public. Morton's entire operation is made public, military contracts are cancelled, and congressional oversight committees are being established. Mike commanded the rest of the town's defenders from the command center of the facility. As citizens carried out intricate defense procedures that kept Morton's forces dispersed and perplexed, the results of Hannah's months of preparation were evident. According to Mike, they are attempting to create a perimeter. But as you taught us, our workers are always changing positions. These experts are unable to adjust to defenders who don't use conventional tactical reactions. Security feeds from the underground complex revealed Morton's highly skilled team trying to break through additional entries. Their coordination and technique were impeccable, just as Hannah would have expected from elite operators. Sophie's voice was calm and clear, Mom. As you intended, all of the kids are safe in the last refuge. The evil guys continue to look in the wrong areas. Hannah watched Morton's team via her thermal scope and said, "Good girl. Do you recall the lesson I gave you about being hidden?" Sophie recited with confidence that often the finest hiding place is the one that is too obvious to inspect. While Morton's forces moved across the building, Hannah's intellect absorbed tactical information. His operators were clearly frustrated. Professional soldiers encountered unexpected opposition that deviated from established protocol. "Claire, how is the governmental response going?" "FBI strike squads are finally on their way, but Morton is using some sort of political sabotage. For at least 2 hours, we remain alone." Hannah observed Morton personally lead his surviving men using her tactical stream. He moved in ways that supported her suspicions. His purpose was not limited to file recovery. It was a personal matter. "Be advised, all teams." Mike's tone was foreboding. "Some sort of sophisticated electronic warfare kit is being used by Morton's operators. We could lose communications." Silently shifting places, Hannah recalled the teachings she had learned from Morton years before. Keep fallback procedures in place. If communication fails, follow the prepared contingency patterns exactly. Morton's squad breached with military precision, causing the main door of the building to blow inward. Through the smoke, 6 operators moved. In the emergency lighting, their sophisticated equipment makes them appear nearly unhuman. "Anderson, Hannah." Even now Morton's voice was authoritative. "This is not how I trained you. Certain secrets must remain hidden, as you well aware." Hannah gave a series of well-placed shots in return. Before they could respond, 3 operators fell. Gaps in their sophisticated armor are discovered by non-lethal bullets. Suddenly understanding they were up against someone who knew their playbook by heart, the others fled for shelter. Hannah said icily, "You taught me tactics, but you never taught me blind obedience. This is more significant than you realize." Morton navigated the building with the assurance of someone who had committed its layout to memory. The revelation of these files and the operations they describe poses a threat to national security. "You mean your criminal enterprise is in danger?" Hannah retaliated, mechanically dispatching another operator. "Claire, how is the evidence progressing?" The detective said it's all over now. Breaking news is broadcast on major networks. Blackstone offices are being raided by federal officials. Morton is losing his political shield. The surviving Blackstone forces encountered more concerted opposition around Eagles Point. Using strategies created especially to thwart professional military operations, Mike's veterans guided civilian defenders. Mike reported with satisfaction that they were breaking formation. "Your plan was successful. They are actually more susceptible to unusual defense strategies because of their higher training." There was now real respect in Morton's voice. "Because of your excellent training, these civilians are fighting more intelligently rather than more forcefully." "That's what I taught you." Hannah said, strolling into the darkness in silence, "You taught me how to hunt. I had no idea that I would turn those abilities against you." Sophie carried on organizing the children's safety procedures in the emergency shelter. "Do you recall my mother's remarks regarding professional soldiers?" She informed the others. "They constantly assume that everyone will fight like them. They don't notice us approaching because of this." Morton's surviving personnel were seen trying to secure the lower levels of the complex in Hannah's tactical stream. They were angrier as a result of their dissatisfaction. Professionals abruptly realized they were no longer the top predators. Claire's voice was caution, "Hannah. Morton is using a federal database to access a procedure related to emergencies. He's authorizing military reinforcement, Hannah. 20 minutes out for heavy units." Hannah watched Morton move his soldiers more urgently through her scope. He moved with the accuracy that had made him a legend in clandestine operations, but there was more to it than that. Desperation. "You have no other choices. Hannah's voice reverberated throughout the building as she called out. The files are openly accessible. Your business is in the open. Blackstone is complete. With composure, Morton answered that Blackstone was always expendable. A front for something more significant that you were unaware of when you were with us. As she evaluated this information, Hannah snubbed out Anotha, our operator who had wandered into her field of vision. Look through the oldest files, Claire. Seek any mentions of Eagle's Point prior to Blackstone's existence. On it already. This goes deeper than we anticipated, Hannah. The building, the secret documents. They are more than merely proof of Morton's activity. They are evidence of something greater. There's some sort of decades-old domestic monitoring program. Morton laughed with real laughter. At last, figuring things out. The significance of this town. Why we prepared to secure it for years. These files reveal more than simply Blackstone. Everyone is exposed by them. Intelligence services, politicians, and military commanders. Everyone who contributed to the establishment of a control system directly in front of Americans. Hannah determined that you are also their cleaner. Finally, understanding is emerging. The one who eliminates issues. It's me who protects this nation. Morton was right. By carrying out the necessary tasks. The actions that are prohibited by law. Hannah observed as Morton's remaining men positioned themselves defensively around the central archive of the facility through her tactical stream. They appeared to be getting ready for a last stand. Sophie's voice was full of confidence. Mom. You educated me about men like him, don't you? Regarding why they ultimately lose every time. Hannah grinned as she readied herself for the last showdown with her old mentor. My dear, what did I teach you? Men who believe they are above the law fail to remember that laws are in place for a purpose. And those who maintain secrets for the wrong reasons end up destroyed. Morton's surviving operators were getting ready for their final stand around the plant. Among the greatest in their industry, they were professionals. They were famous in clandestine missions due to their experience, equipment, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their evaluation. They believed they were above the law and regular people because of their classified status and superior training. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had spent 2 decades discovering that real strength came from upholding justice rather than undermining it. Better equipment or more force weren't enough to win some conflicts. They prevailed because they realized that the most powerful opponent wasn't always the most dangerous. It was the one who stood up for what was right. The emergency lights at the subterranean facility created harsh shadows. Hannah passed through fortified hallways. She heard Morton's surviving operators guarding the central archive room, the greatest secret in Eagle's Point. Mike said that military troops confirmed this through their faulty communications. 2 motorized infantry units, 3 tactical helicopters, and an estimated time of arrival of 17 minutes. These are no longer contractors. They are real armed troops. With accurate shot placement, Hannah eliminated another of Morton's operators while processing tactical intelligence. What did you discover in the oldest files, Claire? The selection of Eagle's Point was not arbitrary. The detective sounded disbelieving. The entire town was constructed as a front. Everything, including the buildings and the streets, is intended to conceal what is beneath. Some sort of enormous surveillance center built in the midst of the Cold War. Morton's chuckle reverberated throughout the building's hallways. Lastly, realizing the wider picture and the significance of this location. Everything constructed here, including the parks, schools, and easy access to the freeway, is intended to conceal what lies beneath. Recalling patterns she had seen in the layout of the town, Hannah came to the conclusion that it was a surveillance station. Concealed behind a picture-perfect small-town facade, tracking domestic conversations and compiling information on American individuals. We watched folks to keep them safe. Morton covered angles she had told him to observe decades earlier with practiced accuracy. created a mechanism to detect dangers before they materialized. None of them ever found out about the best surveillance operation ever developed. Hannah followed Morton's remaining men as they fortified the central archive through her tactical feed. They were becoming more professional in their motions. Operators who were aware of the actual risks involved in their mission. Sophie's voice sounded clear, "Mom. We located the unique exit you mentioned. Behind the old filing cabinets, that is. As you mentioned, they would never consider checking." Hannah responded, "Good girl, utilizing thermal imaging to mark Morton's location through walls. Do you recall the lesson I gave you about men who believe they know every secret? The most obvious ones are always missed," Sophie said with assurance. Against Blackstone's surviving operators, civilian defenders were coordinated by Mike's veterans in town. As regular people performed intricate defensive maneuvers that kept professional warriors off balance, Hannah's months of training were evident. According to Mike, they are reverting to defensive postures. However, Hannah, these incoming military formations are not your typical forces. Special operations markings are visible on the satellite. Hannah responded in silence, because this isn't just about files anymore, and made her way to the central archive. The goal is to preserve a control system that has been in place for many years. "Claire, how is the evidence progressing? Global media, huge networks, and going public everywhere." The investigator hesitated, but Morton can't halt the expose now. "These military forces, Hannah, are acting on special executive authority, a national security emergency edict of some sort." Morton spoke with sincere reverence. "Since I trained you, you've improved. You've taught civilians how to combat professional operators and helped them realize that superior force is meaningless in the face of superior intelligence." Hannah shot down another operator who moved too predictably, saying, "You taught me to hunt. I never imagined using those abilities to defend others against men like you. This country is protected because of men like me." Morton had a strong belief. By carrying out the difficult, essential, and necessary tasks that enable regular people to sleep soundly in their beds at night. Hannah got closer to the central archive by eavesdropping on those same citizens, creating files to manage them, and utilizing gangs like the Dark Knights to keep your cover. Morton clarified that Blackstone was doing more than just supplying muscle, as his operatives occupied last defense positions. They were keeping up the infrastructure while preventing people from paying too much attention to what was actually going on in their community. Hannah observed military units approach Eagles Point through her tactical feed. Her fears were validated by the way they moved. These forces weren't normal. Probably from the same program that had given rise to Morton's operation, these were special operations teams. "How long till they come, Claire?" 10 minutes. "Hannah, these units are permitted to use full cleanup procedures and maximal force." Hannah came to the conclusion that they were coming to destroy everything. Another training accident that never happened was made public by the town, the witnesses, and the proof. "It's the necessary action." Morton's voice had lost any emotion. "You've revealed a decades-old system with files that have the power to topple entire countries. For the sake of the larger good, sacrifices must occasionally be made." Sophie kept organizing the safety precautions for the kids in the emergency shelter. "Do you recall my mother's remarks on secrets?" She informed the others. "People strive harder to hide them the larger they grow. However, the truth always comes to light." Morton's team was seen making last-minute preparations using Hannah's thermal imaging. They were in the ideal places. They computed their fields of fire expertly. These men no longer fought merely for a paycheck. They were defending a system that they supported. Sophie's voice was full of understanding. "Mom. Does this remind you of the time you taught me about power? About how those who possess it occasionally lose sight of the reason for their possession?" "Just like that, darling," Hannah said, getting ready to make her last move. "What other lessons about power did I impart to you?" Sophie repeated that it's not about possessing it. It all depends on how you use it. Additionally, those who use it to harm others eventually lose it. Morton's surviving operators were getting ready for their final stand around the plant. They were experts in their respective fields. They were legendary in clandestine missions due to their experience, equipment, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their basic analysis. They believed they were above the law and regular people because of their better training and classified power. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had spent 2 decades learning that genuine authority comes from defending, not dictating, others. Better equipment or more force weren't enough to win some conflicts. They prevailed because they realized that the most powerful opponent wasn't always the most dangerous. It was the one who recalled what that authority was first meant to defend. As military units approached, Morton said, "You won't stop what's coming. Some secrets must remain hidden. Certain systems must be secured. Regardless of the price." Hannah's answer was icily accurate. "Morton, you forgot the most crucial lesson you ever imparted to me. About the fact that the most dangerous threats aren't usually the ones you can anticipate." Because Hannah Anderson had not spent 2 decades hiding in plain sight in order to allow another control system to take the place of the one she had opposed. The most powerful people didn't always win the most significant wins. Those who recalled what that authority was meant to defend gained them. As Hannah stepped into the Central Archive, military helicopters roared over Eagles Point. Morton and his remaining operators remained waiting. She noticed the stiffness in their stance, yet their firearms trained on her with expert precision. These men had witnessed too many of their peers fail to undervalue her at this point. Mike reported poor communications of military formations entering town limits. Heavy weaponry and 3 tactical teams. They are relocating in order to take important positions. Hannah processed tactical information, keeping Morton in her sights. "Claire, how is the distribution of the evidence going?" The detective said, "Files are everywhere now, several agencies, foreign governments, and international media. However, Hannah, these military units are functioning on a special executive order of some sort. Total power to keep things under control." Morton grinned with sincere admiration. "By teaching civilians how to combat expert operators and demonstrating to them that greater force is meaningless in the face of superior reasoning, you have transcended your training. However, this is now over." Hannah noted each operator's perspective and said, "You're right about one thing. Though not in the manner you believe, this does end today." She observed military formations deploying across Eagles Point via her tactical feed. Her opinion was validated by their actions. These forces weren't normal. Probably from the same clandestine program that had developed Morton's operation, these were special operations teams. Sophie's voice sounded clear, "Mom. As you showed us, we are now in the deep underground. Those that are not shown on any maps." Noting Morton's faint response to Sophie's voice, Hannah said, "Good girl. Do you recall what I told you about males who believe they are in charge? They overlook the fact that true power entails defending, not dominating, others." Sophie gave a confident recitation. Mike's veterans organized civilian defenders in the town to oppose the military formations. Hannah's months of training were evident as regular people followed intricate evasive procedures and vanished into prearranged escape routes. According to Mike, they are attempting to create a perimeter. "But as you taught us, our workers are always changing positions. When defenders don't use typical tactical answers, even skilled soldiers can't adjust." As he spoke, Morton's operators remained in ideal fire positions. "You never saw the wider picture, the true purpose of this facility, or what we were actually defending." Hannah retorted, "I completely understand a control system that was established decades ago to keep an eye on American citizens concealed behind a picture-perfect small-town facade. We watched folks to keep them safe." Morton had a strong belief. Established a network to detect dangers before they materialized. The most successful domestic surveillance program ever developed. Hannah used her thermal imaging skills to follow military formations as they moved through the town. Their accuracy validated her suspicions. These males were permitted to follow all sanitization procedures, removing witnesses, evidence, and anything else that might reveal the truth. How long till they get to the institution, Claire? 5 minutes. They're using communications jammers, electronic warfare gear, and other specialist equipment, Hannah. They intend to shut down the town entirely. Because, Hannah decided, this is no longer just about files. The goal here is to preserve a decades-old system. A control system that permeates every aspect of American life. Morton gave a nod of approval, realizing the extent at last. Why it was necessary to defend this. These data reveal more than simply my business. Everyone is exposed by them. Intelligence services, politicians, and military commanders. Everyone who contributed to the creation of an ideal monitoring system. A lie-based system. Hannah noted the places of tension for each operator as she moved with practiced accuracy. Keeping your cover by working with criminal gangs like the Dark Knights. Using threats against innocent individuals in order to keep your secrets. Morton clarified that Blackstone was doing more than just supplying muscle. They were keeping up the infrastructure while preventing people from paying too much attention to what was actually going on in their community. Sophie's voice was surprisingly wise. According to Mom, those who must frighten others are typically afraid themselves. Mr. Morton, what are you terrified of? Hannah noticed a little lapse in Morton's poise. Like her mother, your daughter is observant. But fear isn't the point here. It has to do with necessity. About taking the necessary actions to ensure the safety of this nation. By eavesdropping on your own citizens. Hannah got rid of an operator who kept changing positions. Constructing files to manage them. Retaining your authority by using violence and threats. Power is merely an instrument. As military forces approached, Morton's operators repositioned. Similar to the abilities I taught you. The instruction that turned you into one of our finest. What counts is how you use it. Here's where you're mistaken. Hannah shot back. Not all power is a tool. It's an obligation. One you long since forgot about. She observed military forces establishing control posts around Eagles Point via her tactical feed. Their movements were efficient and well-trained. Men accustomed to eradicating issues entirely. Claire, how are the town defenders doing? Mike has them distributed in accordance with your plans. Prepositioned supplies, escape tunnels, and secret shelters. All of your preparations for this situation. Morton laughed with real laughter. Always make plans in advance. That's what I taught you. But you can't resist the inevitable. These units are fully empowered and follow all cleanup procedures. Eagles Point will officially be another training accident that never occurred by tomorrow. The most significant lesson you have ever imparted to me has been forgotten. Hannah gave a chilly response. About the fact that the most dangerous threats aren't usually the ones you can anticipate. Because Hannah Anderson had not spent 2 decades hiding in plain sight in order to allow another control system to take the place of the one she had opposed. During those years, she had learned how to keep people safe from men like Morton. As the military forces drew closer to the facility, Morton said, "Last chance. Come back with us. Assist in preserving the framework that protects this nation. Your training and abilities might be put to better use." 3 additional operators were killed before they could respond by Hannah's well-placed rounds. The only thing that matters is the use of my skills. Defending others against men such as yourself. As military personnel started their electronic warfare operation, the lights in the complex flickered around them. Hannah, however, had also expected this. She wasn't only preparing for battle. They aimed to reveal the truth in ways that were impossible to conceal. Sophie's voice was full of confidence. "Mom. Do you recall the lesson you gave me about truth? Regarding how it resembles light?" "My dear, what did I teach you?" That no matter how much you try to cover it, it always manages to show through. And when it comes out, it shines brighter the harder you attempt to bury it. As military units broke through the outer defenses of the complex, Morton's remaining operatives readied themselves for their last stand. Among the greatest in their industry, they were professionals. They were legendary in clandestine missions due to their experience, equipment, and training. However, they had made a crucial mistake in their basic analysis. They believed they were above the law and regular people because of their better training and classified power. They hadn't anticipated dealing with someone who had spent 2 decades learning that genuine authority comes from defending, not dictating, others. Better equipment or more force weren't enough to win some conflicts. They prevailed because they realized that the most powerful opponent wasn't always the most dangerous. It was the one who recalled what that authority was first meant to defend. Morton's last-ditch maneuver was just as the military breach teams burst through the last obstacles. His fingers darted across secret command protocols that could trigger something far more sinister than surveillance devices as he sprinted for the center console of the facility. The remote activation sequence was started. With icy electronic tones, the facility's computers declared that they were now equipped with Contingency Protocol 0. Milliseconds too late, Hannah's shot hit the console, causing sparks to fly and vital systems to start up. She observed military soldiers swarming the outer corridors through her tactical feed, their movements indicating that they were unaware of what Morton had just unleashed. Hannah's voice was urgently focused. "Claire. What is the state of the infrastructure in the town?" "It's everything closing down. Water systems, communications, and the power grid. It's not just shutting down, Hannah. All traces of Eagles Point's existence are being erased by the systems themselves." Morton's laugh now carried true insanity. "Were you expecting us to be without a failsafe? The purpose of this facility was not limited to intelligence collection. It was intended to totally eliminate issues." Hannah observed military forces deploying specialized equipment around the town's perimeter through the reinforced windows of the building. However, these were no longer only containment tactics. They were getting ready for something far more serious. Sophie's voice crackled through a broken communication system. "Mom. Tunnels are beginning to close in on themselves. As you said would occur, automatic barriers are coming down." While using her scope to designate military locations, Hannah gave the order to get everyone to the fallback point. "Our prepared one, which isn't linked to any official systems." Growing static was broken by Mike's voice. "These military units are retreating, Hannah, establishing a controlled perimeter of some sort. They're scared of whatever's coming." Morton entered commands with experienced accuracy as his fingers moved across another console. "Eagles Point vanishes in half an hour. Complete eradication of all digital traces, databases, and records, not just physically." As Hannah watched systems turn on all across the subterranean structure, she realized that this was what this institution truly was. It serves as a kill switch to eliminate unpleasant facts in addition to collecting intelligence. With genuine pride in his voice, Morton affirmed, "We built dozens like it. Tucked down beneath perfectly normal American towns, prepared to destroy any evidence that could jeopardize the system. However, this one was unique. With their specialist equipment identifying them as a classified electronic warfare division, military units arrived at the outer chamber. However, their actions revealed hesitancy, as experts realized they were dealing with something outside of their expertise. "Get everything you found to every major news outlet, every file, every record," Hannah told Claire as she calculated her possibilities. "The truth must be revealed first if this town is to be destroyed. Hannah, these military forces just got new orders, but it's already finished. They are no longer there to control the situation. Their goal is complete erasure, no witnesses, no proof, no indication that Eagles Point ever existed." Hannah observed the town's infrastructure starting to deteriorate through her tactical feed. Communication networks going down, power systems carefully shutting down one after the other, and even building materials beginning to deteriorate due to some sort of classified technology. One last time, Morton offered, your training, your skills. Instead of dying for individuals who will never even know what you spared them from, they may have a higher purpose and contribute to the upkeep of the system that keeps our nation safe. Hannah's reaction was a well-placed bullet that took out yet another vital system. Here's where you're mistaken. It has nothing to do with recognition. It all comes down to doing the right thing, whether or not anyone knows. Despite increasing interference, Sophie's speech could be heard clearly. Mom, you taught me that the hardest decisions reveal our true selves. Do you recall that? You're right, dear. Hannah marked military positions and responded. What more lessons about difficult decisions did I impart to you? That sometimes acting honorably, even at the expense of everything, is what it is to be brave. As military units readied themselves for the erasure of Eagle Points, the facility systems proceeded with their activation sequence. Although they were experts in their field, their fearful gestures demonstrated that they were aware of the true nature of the situation. This cannot be stopped. As more systems went online, Morton issued a warning. The sequence is armed. The failsafe is in operation. It's all gone in 25 minutes. Everything you attempted to preserve and safeguard. However, Hannah Anderson hadn't made it through 2 decades of clandestine operations without figuring out how to manipulate adversary systems. She hadn't prepared Eagle's Point's defenses for months without considering the worst-case scenario. Claire, she ordered. Run the Sunshine Protocol. What? For the first time, Morton lost his temper. That isn't feasible. You were unable to know. However, Hannah was aware of this, having studied the facility's systems for months, comprehended its failsafes, and prepared countermeasures that the designers had not foreseen. Because superior force or better equipment did not win every fight. They prevailed because it was realized that the adversary with the most potent weaponry was not necessarily the most dangerous. It was responsible for working for months to make those very weapons a trap for their users. Sophie. As her preparation started to come to life throughout Eagle's Point, Hannah gave instructions. Do you recall the unique song I taught you? The one with the shadows and lights? Yes, Mother. Sophie's voice was filled with total comprehension. Is it time for me to sing it? Let's sing loudly, my love. Thus, everyone keeps in mind that certain things cannot be removed. Some battles are worth every effort, and some realities cannot be hidden. Military units were getting ready to erase the Eagle Points. Sophie's distinct voice started to reverberate over all of the facility's speakers as Morton's failsafe systems hummed into activation, conveying a coded message that would make all the difference. For Hannah Anderson had not just gotten ready to save her community. She was ready to reveal a system that had been concealed for too long. And when exposed to light, some shadows were unable to endure. Every speaker in Eagle's Point repeated Sophie's melody. Hannah's actual plan is initiated by its straightforward tune that conveys coded instructions. Hidden systems started turning on an alternative system she had spent months developing, rather than the official monitoring network, all throughout the town. What did you do? Morton insisted on seeing the sudden alerts flash on his control consoles. The systems in this facility are categorized as isolated. You were unable to. I learned from you to be ready for anything. Hannah answered, using her scope to indicate military positions. Since your system never kept an eye on the town's kids, I created my own network using that one feature. She observed Sophie's song eliciting pre-programmed reactions throughout Eagle's Point via her tactical feed. Emergency caches that Morton's failsafe couldn't access activated secret defenses, deployed communication systems, and switched to separate networks. Status was instructed by Claire Hannah on Procedure Sunshine. It's functioning. We placed all of the recorders and covert cameras. All of them are streaming straight to the world's media, armed forces, classified technology, and Morton's erase procedures. Now, everyone is watching. As armed personnel attempted to adapt to this unanticipated exposure, the facility's initial systems continued to count down. Although their specialized equipment identified them as experts, their motions revealed increasing hesitancy as operators realized they were now in the public eye. "Just now, you revealed top-secret national security measures," Morton warned, his voice now displaying genuine anxiety. "For this, they will pursue you indefinitely. You and all those you attempted to defend." "No," Hannah retorted as she observed her strategies being carried out through tactical displays. "I've revealed unlawful domestic surveillance, criminal activities concealed by classification, and the kind of secrets that, when revealed, topple governments." When Sophie's song got to the second stanza, Hannah launched yet another round of counterattacks. Across town, civilian defenders started putting into practice the procedures she had taught them for months, not just military strategies, but also how to protect the truth from those who would want to destroy it. Sophie used their secure connection to report, "Mom. Even the young children are recalling their own roles, precisely as we practiced." Hannah marked military troops changing positions and said, "Good girl." What aspect of the music is the most crucial? The statement that truth is like sunshine. Regardless of how hard people try to block it, it gets everywhere. As the chaos grew, Mike's voice broke through. "These armed forces are beginning to retreat, Hannah. Now that everything is coming to light, their leaders must be receiving new directives." Hannah saw Morton's meticulously constructed system start to fall apart through her tactical feed. His entire intelligence-gathering surveillance network had turned against him, revealing proof of its own illicit activities to the globe. Complete erasing takes 15 minutes. Critical levels of the facility's systems announced emotionless fail-safe procedures. Hannah, however, had also expected this. Her own countermeasures persisted while Morton's computers counted down to the elimination of Eagle points and military forces battled with global exposure. Not only is evidence being preserved, but the facility's own procedures are being used against it. "Activate the last phase just like we planned," she said to Claire. A signal was sent. "It's working, Hannah. The fail-safe systems are beginning to see the danger in their own functions. The monitoring procedures are going after themselves." Morton's chuckle now had a frantic tone. "You didn't merely construct a network in parallel. Reprogramming the initial systems is what you do. Caused individuals to perceive their own behaviors as unfriendly. I learned from you to use the advantages of my adversaries against them." Through her tactical channel, Hannah verified that military troops were receiving new orders. "So I set up your ideal security system to begin keeping an eye on itself." Morton's classified technology started to show the ultimate weakness in any system based on complete observation across Eagle's Point. Even those who are watching become targets when everything is being observed. Sophie's voice was full of understanding. "Mom. Is this similar to the lesson you gave me on bullies? Regarding how they collapse most when confronted with themselves?" "Just like that, my dear. What more self-acceptance lessons did I impart to you? That the most serious offenders are those who find it intolerable to be exposed for who they truly are." Hannah watched the last part of her plan come to life on facility displays. The protocols of the surveillance system, which were created to detect and neutralize threats, now regard their own activities as hostile acts. Decades of top-secret technology are inwardly spiraling and starting to fall apart. This is not possible. Now there was genuine urgency in Morton's voice. "The entire system. You will ruin decades of labor. We constructed this infrastructure to safeguard our nation." Hannah clarified, observing the withdrawal of military units from the town. "I'm revealing the infrastructure you put in place to rule this nation, because control-based systems inevitably end up destroying itself." The countdown at the facility went on, but now its own procedures were at odds with one another. Methods for surveillance aimed at removing hazards to their own operations. Protocols for classification are trying to hide any indication that they exist. The automatic voice said, 10 minutes to complete erasure, but as Hannah's reprogramming fully took effect, the message took on new undertones. Because Hannah Anderson hadn't only been ready to save her village, several hostile systems were discovered, and counter-surveillance procedures were started. She had been studying the basic weakness in Morton's flawless system for months. Its failure to identify itself as the same threat it was intended to neutralize. As she saw military forces begin their departure, she gave Claire instructions. Ensure that all press outlets are aware of what they are witnessing, including the destruction of illegal domestic spying as well as classified technologies. After her tactical stream brought decades of hidden infrastructure to the public's attention, Hannah saw it start to fall apart, not by force or violence, but just by forcing it to see itself clearly for the first time. Sophie's voice was full with quiet pride. Mom. Do you recall that you explained to me that shadows cannot exist in direct sunlight? You're right, dear. Furthermore, what is the most crucial aspect of revealing secrets? It's like sunshine, that truth. No one can put it back in a box around them once it begins to shine. As armed troops fled global exposure, Morton's flawless system began to destroy itself. Although they were experts in their field, they had made a crucial mistake in their basic design. They had created a system that was entirely centered on observing others. It never thought about the consequences of having to watch itself. Better equipment or more force weren't enough to win some conflicts. They prevailed because they realized that violence was not the most effective way to combat corruption. Morton's final desperate maneuver brought the facility systems to their terminal seconds of self-destruction. Hannah had also expected him to reach for a concealed weapon. With surgical accuracy, her bullet disabled his arm without causing his death. Morton frowned and gripped his injured arm, saying, "You should finish it. Considering all I've done and all I was prepared to do." As Hannah saw military soldiers finish their withdrawal from Eagle's Point via her tactical stream, she responded, "That's the difference between us. Threats are not eliminated by me. I let the light shine on them." She observed her countermeasures working through facility displays. The protocols of the monitoring system, which were created for flawless observation, were now completely inward-looking. Decades of top-secret technology mechanically disassembling itself. The automated voice warned that the system would collapse in 5 minutes. It is widely acknowledged that all classified procedures are hostile activities. Victory rang through their safe conduit in Claire's voice. "It's finished, Hannah. Under the direct supervision of Congress, every major network in the world is airing the withdrawal of armed units. This can no longer be buried." Mike led civilian defense in town as they took control of defunct military installations. These individuals departed quickly, leaving behind all the evidence we need to verify what actually transpired here, including classified equipment and documents. Through the town speakers, Sophie's song persisted, its straightforward melody now serving as a powerful symbol. Her voice was one of quiet pride. "Mom. Now everyone is joining in on the song. Even adults can understand the words, light and truth." "You're right, dear." Hannah answered as she secured the rest of the facility systems. What is the most crucial aspect of revealing secrets? Because people cannot act as though they are unaware of the truth once they have seen it. Morton was surprisingly calm as he saw his life's effort fall apart. "Do you honestly believe that the world is safer when everything is made public? Some secrets keep individuals safe. The beasts are kept at bay by some shadows." "No." Hannah made the correction while keeping an eye on final system shutdowns. "Those who keep secrets are protected. Everyone else is protected by the truth." She observed decades of covert infrastructure continuing its automated self-destruction through her tactical stream. Systems for surveillance are identifying their own activities as potentially dangerous. Protocols for classification destroy proof of their own existence. "What's the latest on civilian casualties, Claire?" "Not at all." With relief, the detective stated. Your evacuation procedures were flawless. Every citizen was present. Once the military units discovered they were being televised globally, they even withdrew without engaging. As Morton's systems blew up, Hannah's alternative network kept recording everything. Every second was recorded. Every bit of evidence was kept safe. Every truth that could never be buried again was revealed to the light. The facility computers warned of a 2-minute system outage. Every classified operation has been recognized as a major threat. Sophie's voice was wise beyond her years. Mom. Is this similar to the power lesson you gave me? You know how the strongest people don't dominate others. Just like that, my dear. What more lessons about true strength did I impart to you? That it stems from safeguarding individuals rather than dominating them. And in the end, the truth always triumphs over falsehoods. Morton's laugh was unexpectedly sincere. You didn't only reveal the system. You helped it see its own reflection and turn against itself, causing it to shudder at what it had become. For that is the true meaning of perfect surveillance. Hannah explained how news feeds showed military commanders being questioned by Congress. Even those who watch must finally confront themselves when everything is observed. She watched the last minutes of the system on facility displays. The goal of decades of classified technology, which was created to collect intelligence on American residents, is now to completely eradicate all evidence of its own existence. The system will fail completely in 1 minute. All surveillance procedures identified as hostile operations were announced by the automated voice. Mike's voice flowed across their safe channel with joy. The town is very safe, Hannah. Abandoned secret equipment, military units gone. Citizens are even taking back the Dark Knight's former domain. Claire included a report of her own. The FBI and congressional oversight committees are among the federal agencies that are pushing in, but they are good ones this time. What happened here can no longer be concealed. Hannah's plan was finished as Sophie's song reached its last verse, which included coded instructions. Hidden systems completed their work throughout Eagle's Point, keeping truth in ways that could never be undone rather than erasing evidence as Morton's algorithms had planned. 30 seconds before the system fails completely. All classified operations are now self-targeted, the facility declared. Morton was very calm as he watched the countdown. They'll attempt to reconstruct it using various towns and techniques, you know. Shadows always come back. Perhaps Hannah agreed to provide federal investigators with the last piece of evidence, but now people know to look for them because they know that regular people can fight back. Recognize that no system can defeat the power of truth. She saw Eagle's Point emerge into the brilliant autumn sunlight through her tactical stream. As residents took back their town, federal agents recorded evidence, and the world watched as decades of unlawful monitoring were exposed. 10 seconds before the system fails completely. All of the protocols that the computers announced are now known to pose the worst risks to the civilian population. Sophie's voice was full of understanding. Mom. Recall your lesson on light and shadows, which explained how shadows can appear frightening until they are illuminated. You're right, dear. How do shadows fare in direct sunlight? Since light always outweighs darkness, they vanish entirely. Through the simple act of finally perceiving itself clearly, the facility systems achieved 0 decades of classified technology, concluding their demise without the use of force or violence. As dawn sunshine streamed through facility windows outside Eagle's Point, Hannah secured Morton for federal custody. Eagle's Point already appeared different, not just a small hamlet anymore, but a symbol of something significant. I learned how to hunt in the dark from you. I never imagined I'd use those skills to protect people from the shadows themselves because Hannah Anderson hadn't just saved her town, she said to her former mentor as federal investigators drew closer. She had demonstrated that common people might resist unlawful monitoring. No system could overcome the power of that fact. That bringing some shadows into the light would not allow them to survive. Sophie and the other kids waited. Their straightforward song had contributed to the revelation of decades of illicit activities when Hannah left the prison. No classified system could bury the reality that their innocent voices had conveyed, and they were eager to return home. Sophie grinned, her eyes gleaming with insight beyond her years, as sweetie Hannah questioned while holding her daughter. "Mom, we are at home. Everyone now understands that home isn't about power or dominance. It's about standing together in the brightness around them and safeguarding one another." Eagles Point started to recover not only from Morton's operation but also from decades of locals banding together to conduct covert surveillance, demonstrating that common people could resist corruption. Since some conflicts weren't won by superior force or better equipment, that truth was more powerful than any shadow. They were gained by realizing that violence was not the most effective tool against darkness. All it was doing was putting everything into the open. 2 more amazing tales await you directly on your screen in the next section. You won't want to miss these if you like this one. Simply click to view, and remember to subscribe. A lot would be at stake. Thank you.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.